faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur le greffier.
Monsieur le sénateur Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Farnham. Madame la sénateur Ferguson.
Présente.
Monsieur le sénateur Lefondre. Madame la sénateur Valois.
Présente.
Madame la sénateur Moore. Monsieur le sénateur Pallet. Monsieur le sénateur Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Madame la connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Madame la connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brélade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Madame la connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Madame le député Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député de Grouville.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Lewis.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Higgins.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Masson. Madame le député Pinel.
Présente.
Monsieur le député de Saint-Martin. Monsieur le député de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le député Doublé. Monsieur le député Labby.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Wickenden. Monsieur le député de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Truscott.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Young. Monsieur le député Ash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Guida.
Présent.
Monsieur le député de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le député de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le député de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer. Madame le député Perchard.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Pamplin.
Présent.
Madame le député Gardner.
Monsieur le greffier.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération étant accompagnée de ta bénédiction, réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qui t'a plu de commettre à leurs soins. Quand nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé, Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant « Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi est le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen. Monsieur le sénateur Farnham.
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Lefondre.
Sir, Chief Minister Rattley on State's business. He's due to return later today. Thank you.
And the business again? It's the same as
State's
yesterday.
business, sir, yes.
Members content that the Chief Minister be marked away on State's business? Yes.
Madame le sénateur Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le sénateur Pallet.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Masson.
Excusez.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le député Masson est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Madame le député Dublé.
It's not on my list, I don't think. Sir Defo.
Monsieur le député Wickenden.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Les États sont constitués. We return to the 41st Amendment. We are debating the amendment to the amendment lodged by the Minister for the Environment. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Wickenden, do you wish to speak?
No, sir.
No, you're in the chat. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Yes, Deputy Guida.
So, once more, we are faced with reforms, rather puerile view of how economics work, which is made easier by the complete disregard for the laws of physics. We've seen this before, you know. When you get into a bus, there's somebody asking you for money. It's troublesome, it's expensive, why don't we do without it? Just get in, don't pay. Much easier. There's free, you'll use it more, and it will be much simpler, you know, less work to do. And here we have, again, exactly the same problem. Not enough cheap homes in Jersey. So the only thing we can do, of course, is order people to build cheap homes. We don't have to consider the market. We don't have to consider why those homes are expensive. We just order people to make them cheap. That's simple. I call it the Venezuelan school of economics. Bread is expensive, fix the price. The shop cannot fix the price, nationalize the shops. The shops cannot buy the flour, well, nationalize, oh, wait, they went to Colombia now, so we don't have them, and we're the country with the most petrol on the planet, and one of the poorest economies. You know, oh, what a shame. So we have the same problem here, where you're trying to ask economic actors, people who actually run the economy, you just want to force them to do something. So let's say, for example, I'm Port of Jersey. I've got this nice land, and I know that if I build an apartment building on top of it, it's worth at least 20 million pounds. So that's what it's like on my spreadsheet. Now the Assembly will decide that, no, you must not make money on it. We'll consider that those 20 million pounds don't exist, because you already have them, so why account for them? You know, let's say, this is my assets, this is my treasure. No. You already have them. You know, so like Senator Mezek already has a guitar, so that guitar is worth nothing because he already owns it, he's paid for it, he has it, it's worth nothing, he should be able to give it away for free. So same with Ports of Jersey, they've got this big site, let's make it worth nothing. And that will not change anything, we're just asking them to make it worth nothing so that we can give apartments, we can try to make apartments cheaper. So what will happen? They have this thing on their spreadsheet saying 20 million pounds, now it's zero, so this year they don't need to pay a dividend and they don't need to pay taxes because they've just lost money, just because we told them what you have is worth nothing. Or they could be smarter and say, well, if we develop it and earn nothing, so we spend two years working like madmen to try to develop it, and then it's worth nothing, or we could just sell it. I wonder what we're going to do. I wonder whether we're going to keep that land that is so much trouble, or whether we're just going to sell it to somebody else to develop. Same with the States, you know. So we own sites. There was hundreds of millions until about, 10, 15 today, when they will be worth nothing. So what do we do as the states, as the government? Do we just write them off and say, yeah, we had this in our spreadsheet, you know, that's the sort of capital that we borrow against and everything, but right now, well, it's not going to be worth anything because it's very important that we make cheap apartments. And of course, so Either we sell them to other people, we build offices instead. That's what I would do if I was SOJDC. So Ports of Jersey just sell, SOJDC go back to building offices. It's not that we really need them, but this won't be affected by this particular proposition. So yeah, let's just build offices and forget about all those pesky apartments that are so troublesome. All of the housing in Jersey is expensive, not just the 10 lowest percent, all of it. And the only way that we make all of the housing in Jersey less expensive is by having more of it. And to have more of it, we need to encourage people to develop it, to build it. If we put obstacles in their way, if we say, yes, you can develop, you can spend years of your life developing this, building this, but you cannot make any money. Profits, forget about profits, forget about enhancing your life doing this, just do it for free. It's not going to happen. So, yes, we may have a few more affordable homes available on the gateway, but the rest of the market is going to separate itself and continue going away. And it's going to be even worse because if we build less, there will be less availability, prices are going to go up. So, again, it's this thing about, the price is 500,000, but if I take my Sharpie and I write a 3 instead of the 5, look, I've solved the problem. You don't look back, you don't look at the price of aggregates, which we're going to look at here in a few days. If you have to import them, that was expensive. Building becomes more expensive. We don't look at the cost of builders. We don't look at the value of all these things on a spreadsheet. So let's think about all that. There is no easy solution that we can take, in 15 minutes. There's no easy decision that will all of a sudden change the housing market. The housing market needs more houses. That's the only thing that it needs. So everything that we do today that detracts from that makes it more difficult to build houses, is going to be a hindrance and is going to make the market worse. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Senator Gorst.
Thank you, sir. Yesterday, a number of speakers spent their contribution talking about their angst in regard to this amendment and Senator Mezek's amendment as well. And I fear, sir, that my comments are just going to add to that angst. Because let me be clear, I think that SOJDC and Andium do an excellent job on behalf of the government and on behalf of islanders. But they are the servants of islanders and they are the servants of the Assembly, not the other way round. And it cannot be the other way round. But I do congratulate them on the work that they have done to date. What both of these amendments refer to is setting parameters to which those government-owned bodies should work in the future. And the reason I'm in angst this morning is because I broadly like the Minister's amendment. It allows for appropriate flexibility. It allows for appropriate consideration of viability, which is extremely important. It allows for assisted purchasing rather than simply continuing to talk about affordable housing. But where I am greatly disappointed is that it points again to the 15%. And we had this debate some months ago, and at that point, sir, I was reassured by my ministerial colleagues that 15% was a flaw, and that they would do everything that they could to rise above that floor of 15%. And I took them at their word. And the reason I find it disappointing that this amendment has 15% is quite simply that, sir. We can't say that we're aiming for more than 15% and a number of months later come back and use the same 15% as a floor. It's very challenging for those of us who accepted at face value what we were told during the last debate, when the same thing has happened again. Now, the reason I like the rest of the Minister's amendment is because I, like many members in the Assembly, want to see the proposal that SOJDC have got on the table and are going to outline planning permission. I want to see that delivered. And that is a plan which is mixed use with lots of public realm benefit. And to my mind, this proposal, or these two proposals, should not be covering old ground. And I would go so far as to say, sir, that there is, I cannot see how there is a way that SOJDC's proposal for the waterfront would be captured by Senator Mezek's amendment, because we discussed that previously. Now, the Minister uses not just the island plan that we debate in the Assembly, but he also then goes away and his officials deliver complex supplementary planning guidance on all of these policies. And often that supplementary planning guidance can be frustratingly technical and adds much more colour and depth to the island plan. And I do think that there is an opportunity in that supplementary planning guidance, perhaps as the Attorney General mentioned yesterday, for the Minister to, in that supplementary planning guidance, make sure and ensure that the SOJDC's plan for the waterfront is not caught by Senator Mezek's amendment. Yesterday, we accepted Senator Mezek's amendment about affordable housing on privately owned sites. And I know all of the reasons that we did that, having voted for the H3 policy previously. And then when that policy was at the point of enactment, it was clearly indicated by developers, their agents and builders and landowners that actually, rather than helping the supply of housing, it would hinder the supply of housing. And I am very much of the view that we should be pulling every lever that we have to deal with the affordability crisis that we are now encountering. I think that Andium can help us with that. I think that the SOJDC can help us with that. But I am absolutely not prepared in the current situation to accept a floor of 15%. It doesn't appropriately deal with the situation that we face, and it will not provide sufficient affordable houses for our community. I can't be any clearer, and I cannot accept an argument that suggests it does, because it doesn't. But so if I then swing back to my angst on Senator Mezek's proposal, there is some flexibility in that proposal. I accept that. I'm uncomfortable that supplementary planning guidance is going to be able to do everything that I would like to see it do, i.e. carve out the waterfront, make sure that 100% is not the floor, but that we can come down from 100% to give community gain. And therein lies the dilemma, sir. Do we want a 15% floor? I don't. Do I want 100% floor? No, I don't. I want the flexibility to produce the maximum amount of affordable or assisted purchase housing, whilst also ensuring that those sites are viable and give back community gain. Because I don't accept Reform's economic view that government-owned land is free. Of course it's not free. There is a value to taxpayers. And I want to see us maximising that value to taxpayers to enhance community facilities, of course, but not at the expense and detriment to maximising affordable housing. And so, having given my colleagues the benefit of the doubt last time round on the 15%, I can't do that today, sir, for all of the reasons that I've just outlined. I know that others will, and I understand why they will do, because they're worried about the waterfront, and I am too. But as I sit here, sir, I'm really not sure, equally, whether I can go with Senator Mezek's original proposition unamended. That's why, sir, I did ask the Minister to amend his 15% to say 50%. That would have been a far more reasonable floor, and I'd have had no problem with that whatsoever. So I find myself on this Tuesday morning of the 22nd of March, facing a housing crisis, wanting to help solve it, as I think most members do, and we know that from the way that they have spoken and voted throughout this debate, to allow for taller residential buildings, to support Senator Moore's dealing once and for all with the glass house issue because the crisis is so important we've got no choice, and to rezoning some greenfield sites. And there is no doubt that another part of the answer is, and has to be, building more affordable assisted purchase housing on state-owned land. And I'm afraid neither of these propositions, the amendment nor the amendment to the amendment, gives me comfort that we're going to get that equation right. But as we're speaking to the Minister's amendment, sir, with a heavy heart, I am not able this morning to support it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Now, my God, I wasn't going to speak in the debate until I heard Senator Gorst. Senator Gorst, I think, to quote Shakespeare, does protest too much. He was the chief minister for 6 years, and all the policies he pursued have led to the current housing crisis. And for him to talk about, oh, I can't support this, first of all, let's go back to the first one. He's prepared to support 50% if the Senate should bring that forward, but he can't even support 15%. Senator Gorst's policies, not only in the time he was chief minister, but in other areas, have gone against trying to deal with a housing crisis. I go back to the point that in September of 2020, the states passed a proposition that we'd actually produce a digital property register for both residential and commercial properties. The purpose was because foreign direct investment was probably accounting for 30 to 40% of the price rises we had at the time. Senator Gorst spoke out against one element of the plan, which was to use the Jersey Financial Services Commission, which is absolutely essential if we're going to find out who owns property through trusts and through companies. Yet he opposed that, and he successfully convinced the states to oppose that. He didn't argue against the other two elements of the proposition, but when it came to the vote, he voted against the lot. Now, we've now been coming under pressure from the UK government because of the fact that many of the properties owned by Russian oligarchs and others in London are owned through offshore companies, many in Jersey. In fact, Jersey is one of the leading players in this. Now, he's prepared to get a register for them, and he says, yes, ours is a priority. I don't believe it. Unfortunately, his record is such, I can't believe anything that he says in terms of wanting to deal with the affordable housing crisis. It's unaffordable because of his actions and the actions of his colleagues who pursued a particular type of economic policy. Now, coming to the proposition, I'm going to support the idea of Senator Messick. I've been in the States now 13 years, and I'm fed up with the number of debates we've had about affordable housing. One, we don't know what affordable is anymore because prices have gone up, it's going to get worse. Secondly, we talked about using state-owned property for as long as I've been in the States. And unless we actually do something about it, we'll be talking about it for the next 15 years or 20 years, because there are elements in this island who do not want us to house our people, basically. All they want to do is build expensive luxury properties, which the vast majority of people in this island can't afford. So, sir, I will be supporting the amendment, but I will not listen anymore to rubbish, I must say, by former chief ministers who did nothing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. I won't necessarily address comments made from the last speaker. Senator Gorst did make, I think, a very good speech on this. He raised some important issues, and I noted he kept referring to the floor of 15%, floor FLOOR, but I think he could just as well have meant floor FLAW, because that's what this policy is. It is flawed, and it is seeing us, or setting us up, to not get best value from the land that we own to address the housing crisis. And that is why it makes members like Senator Gorst, who politically has very little in common with me, feel uncomfortable about this. And I would say to members of the government, go out there into your constituencies and ask the public what they think about this. Do they think that when we're losing green fields, that using government-owned land to build homes, which we are designating 85% of them to be unaffordable to the average islander, do you think they're pleased with that? Because I tell you that they're not. This is a Royal Square bubble idea that really doesn't meet the expectations of our constituents. And so I say to those members of the government, just for a moment try to live in the real world on this. Deputy Gida started his comments by referring to Reform Jersey's puerile view of economics. And if you didn't know what the word puerile meant, Deputy Gida helpfully demonstrated it for the rest of his speech with his frankly ludicrous comparisons with Venezuela. Please let's raise the standard of debate in here. There is nothing like Venezuela in what's being proposed in here. And the sheer irony of it, where he said, this absurd idea that we can simply order people to make cheap homes. Well, what's he just done with the green fields we've rezoned? That's exactly what they're rezoned for, to be told you can only build affordable homes on this at 100%. So actually he's criticising the government democratically choosing to do this at the same time as forcing those greenfield sites to have this same standard applied to them. So actually what this amendment proposes is far more democratic in terms of us choosing to manage our land differently. And I reject this idea that this is not proper economics. And Deputy Guida very sensibly used the comparison of guitars to use that as an example, one that speaks to me personally, as that's something I'm very interested in. Well, so I can say to Deputy Guida that if you wanted to buy a good Gibson Les Paul guitar, top of the range, it will cost you around £3,000. It will be made up of hardware and wiring, but the wood is the main cost because they're made out of mahogany wood. And if you have to buy that wood in, the profit margin would be squeezed when you went to sell that guitar. But if you had a mahogany tree in your back garden and you chose to cut it down and carve the wood yourself, you would get it for substantially cheaper. That's what we're talking about here. We own this land, we can choose to use it differently, and we have, in the past, we have sold off the land that we own at a nominal fee to the government-owned providers to make sure that they get best value for it. I recall in times in the past, we've even sold land to Andium for £1, I believe, as a nominal fee to transfer it to them so they can get best value of it. But when it came to the waterfront and South Hill, and that financial guidance that we were provided to prove to us that it was simply impossible to build more affordable housing on those sites, what was factored in? It was the SOJDC paying the government back market rates for that land. And that's why it was apparently impossible to build more affordable homes. But if we chose to do something different with that land, which we are democratically entitled to do, we can get better value for it, and we can increase the proportion of affordable homes on those sites. That is within our gift to do. So do not accept that this is impossible, that we simply cannot find a financial arrangement above 15%. And when you hear those arguments from Deputy Guida and the like, and also consider what Senator Gorst said about this 15% floor, well, the problem is it won't be the floor, it will end up being the ceiling, because you set that target and that's simply what they'll work to, and they'll come up with their financial arrangement to prove that anything higher than that is possible. Or we can't do more than that because we have to pay market rate for the land. We can't do that because we have to provide 25% shared equity rather than 15% shared equity. Or we can't do that because of this, we can't do that because of that, when in reality all these things are choices. And again, Senator Gorst makes a point which I agree with, which is that in some of these sites, it isn't just about the homes you're building, it is about the community provision as well. And that costs money, and some of that stuff won't be profitable, that you'll have to find the funding for it somehow. And if you mix that in with the rest of what you're developing and the money you'll make from that, then you can make it viable in some way. And that's a perfectly good point, and we all want to see that. We all want to see us get the best use, not just for housing, but community provision and all the rest of it on some of these sites. But how is it that Andium Homes, which is not our provider for amenity facilities, but somehow still manages to factor it into their developments, like the new premises they'll be making for Autism Jersey on the Ancourt Brewery site, for example, the fact they're offering to put in a youth centre as part of their developments as well, something that's not actually within their remit, they're able to do that. They're able to provide new open green space on their developments, and they still provide £30 million back to the Treasury every year. SOJDC in some years barely manages a penny spent back to us. And that's meant, apparently, to be our vehicle for regeneration in St Helier. And can anyone actually point out what regeneration we've got as a result of that? They've widened the pavement on Conway Street. That's about it. And in fairness, it needed to be widened. And now we're getting Midvale Road, about like a decade after we first talked about those improvements to Midvale Road. This model doesn't work. Deputy Labby yesterday, I think it was the closing speech of yesterday's sitting, started by making a point which I'm really surprised that he's repeating, because he made this point in a previous debate on this subject, and I would have hoped, with the benefit of time, he would have thought it through a bit more to realise how absurd what he was saying was. He said for a second time that the Assembly, the democratically elected representatives of the people of Jersey, is the greatest threat to the plans of Andium and the SOJDC. Has he forgotten who works for who here? They are our delivery agents. We're elected by the people. We're accountable to them. We're the ones who set the plans, and they are the ones who go out and deliver it. We are not their servants. It doesn't work that way round. If the SOJDC come to the government and say jump, we don't say how high. We say we believe this is what the people of Jersey expect us to deliver on their behalf using the assets that we own, and very high up on their list of priorities is the housing crisis. And it simply defies logic in the minds of most members of the public to believe that we will take land that we own and build homes that nobody realistically can afford and which will not raise the funding for those community provisions. Deputy Morell, I think, also made a good speech on this yesterday. He referred to the cross-subsidy argument and scarcity of land being one of the issues that that affects the argument here. But he used a word, and I guess sowed a seed when using this word, which other members have used since then, which is the word inflexibility. That's been referred to my amendment as opposed to the government's amendment to it. And I would say, sir, that if we want to talk about inflexibility, the greatest inflexibility that we have imposed in this Iron Plan debate so far has been on the greenfields that have been rezoned. We still maintain greater flexibility in my amendment unamended, and there will still be some form of viability test within that, so there will be a degree of wiggle room, but your target of 100% is set as high as it can be so that you will have to make a very substantial effort before having to deviate from that. Whereas if you set it at 15%, that will simply be taken as the basic standard, and that will be what they aim for. Sir, I have little else to say because we'll come back to this debate, either amended or unamended, depending on how this next vote goes. But this really is our last chance to get something set in stone to protect the land that we own and get best use out of it. It is not a choice between community provision and or affordable housing. We can have both, and there are other funding options we can look at. We don't need to maximise the value out of every square inch of land that we own that could be used to provide the value of homes for people to live in which they can afford, which they can base their lives in, thrive, contribute into the local economy because they've got more money in their pockets than they otherwise would have, rather than packing these luxury investment properties that don't serve the need that the government's own statistics tell them that we have in Jersey. This will be a serious missed opportunity if we don't go for it, and I think it's something that we will come to lament, and many members of the public, I think, will simply be bewildered by this. I say to the Minister for the Environment and his government colleagues, he has no groundswell of support out there for this policy, and I hope members will reject it.
Thank you, Senator. Deputy Martin.
Thank you, sir, and a pleasure to follow the Senator, who, for the last 6 months, has been screaming that we have a housing crisis. It's not a problem. It can't be described as anything less than a crisis. And every vote so far this week, sir, him and his party have voted against putting new homes in parishes where they're wanted for different reasons. And we're back here again, sir. The same debate as last year. They couldn't get 50%. We couldn't get 30%. Now they want 100% on government-owned land. The government of Jersey and the states of Jersey own nothing It's all the people's land, paid for by the people. Please accept that basic economic fact, Senator. People have paid for this over many, many years. When the Senator was questioned yesterday and asked if he would accept that this is people's land, I think it was the Environment Minister asked him the question, a clarification, he said his economics didn't work like that. Don't know what he meant, but he got a different economic working somewhere. This is not our land. It has been paid for by taxpayers and rents over many, many years, and millions of pounds are invested. Deputy Taddeo said yesterday, another member of Reform, said the waterfront is reclaimed land. You can't put a value on that. Well, how does he think he got there? Does he think Poseidon, while we were asleep all one night, pointed his staff at it and moved the tide back over a mile? No, you can't make this up, sir. Again, 40 years ago, there was a decision to reclaim that land, and millions have been spent on it. And while we were spending that money, sir, we weren't spending it on other things. We weren't maybe putting enough into health or maybe education, some other things. But it's got no value today. Oh. So last November we did have the debate on the 50 and the 30. All of them were chucked out. What's changed? Well, sir, I am old enough to be cynical. I wonder if when Reform was sitting around the office and having a strategic look at the island plan, they realised where this amendment would come. Now, could they have thought, if we vote against everything on green fields, by the time we get to this one, the rest of the Assembly be so desperate, they might pass it. Well, hopefully we're not that silly, sir, because I say you still have to take the economics with you. They've already disappointing the likes of Deputy Higgins and some of the constables, where they could have got, some got through and a few, their 4 or 5 votes would have got them across the line. But no, they've taken the moral ground, sir. We will not put a piece of concrete down in a housing crisis to help other people in other parishes until we have got as much as we think we can out of states-owned land. Again, not states-owned land. Senator Moore, to answer Senator Moore, sir, from her excellent question she put in a really good speech, Senator Mesick's amendment might as well get the plans here now and I'll put a match to them for the waterfront, because that's what will happen. Hours and hours, thousands of pounds, consultation, and they will have to go. They will not work under this. A third of our islanders live on the waterfront, and they want this, the new round down there. They want the shops, they want the vibrancy, they want to be able to go and walk down there on a Saturday, Friday night, Sunday afternoon with their families. They want it to be a good place. They don't want just concrete homes down there. But then I think somebody said, oh, we can find another 50 million and we'll do the infrastructure. No, we haven't got the money. We've just been through a pandemic. We've not put any taxes up. We haven't got the money. But don't worry about that. People who live in St Helier should really be able to have the great thing that is the waterfront. I've said it for years. We've had debates on an underground way to get there, a piece of land over the top, etc., etc. And I've always said, if you've got a good waterfront, people will find a way to get there. They can cross a road. And they do cross roads in many, many other waterfronts to get to the great facilities that are there. The Minister, the Housing Minister, has also pointed out, maybe not in this debate, but I think last November, that this is not just for first-time buyers. If it's people already living in the waterfront or on state-owned land, and you can't get on the first-time buyer list, sir, if you've already, say, one of the partners already behind a first-time buyer house. So, or you've bought the one bedroom at the waterfront and you want to then go up and build, want to buy a bigger property, because Senator wants 100% all first-time buyers affordable. So that puts I've loved living here for 10 years, or I can't get a bigger place because they're not there now. So I'm really, really concerned that this plan of reform thinks, is something that we should now, because they haven't supported anything, be so desperate to support. It's really not like that, sir. It is not our land. We are the custodians for a very short time while we have the privilege to sit in this assembly. You can only give it away, and they mean to give it away once, and that's why their plan must fail. Sir, I plead with the Assembly to support the Minister's amendment. It is fair. It will keep the plans where they are, and I think the Housing Minister said they will start building in early 23. If you don't support the Minister's amendment, and then you did go on to support the Senators, just forget them homes. Just forget them homes. We approved yesterday some first-time buyer homes on a certain number on green fields, and I did vote for it. Again, let's see how that works, because it's not new. It was called H3, and developers just said no. They sat on the land, and that is why we are where we are as well today. So when you think back to what Deputy Russell Abbey did say, sometimes it is this Assembly who can put the wrong direction in and end up with a third, I think it was, on all the H3 sites had to be a third of the homes had to be affordable, and the developer said can't do it, not building them, and the fields stayed where they were, and they're still there. So you do have to do things carefully. You have to appreciate the money that's been put into these lands over the years, not our money. No magic money tree, things that didn't get done because we built this land, and now it's suddenly owned by 49 of us to do with what we will. That is absolutely not my economics, sir. Do not support Senator Mesic. Put your whole support behind the Minister. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Pinnell.
Thank you, sir. The amendment before us by the Minister for the Environment, to be clear, preserves the default position that all state-owned land will comprise only affordable homes or subsidised housing. However, there is an acceptance that where a government plan stipulates a mix of housing is required for good reasons, such as viability and the provision of infrastructure improvements, there will still be a minimum of subsidised housing at 15%. Senator Mesic's original amendment does not have a minimum percentage. So if the viability test is such that open market housing is required, his amendment does not prescribe a minimum. The Minister's amendment provides that minimum percentage for subsidised homes. So during this long debate on the island plan, we have had various comments about unaffordable housing. Allow me to emphasise that government and the state-owned entities do not ever construct unaffordable homes, but there are circumstances when it is appropriate to construct unsubsidised homes outside of approved schemes. It is surely appropriate to construct open market homes along with the subsidised homes so as to ensure that all islanders' housing needs are addressed, not just those meeting the criteria via the housing gateway. I speak on behalf of the state-owned entities. We, as shareholder, work with the state-owned entities to ensure a wide variety of developments on the island that match the varying requirements for all islanders, together with some fantastic public realm and place making alongside these developments. So we should be developing on the state-owned land for a wide range of islanders, allowing all islanders the opportunity to live where they prefer on the island. As has already been mentioned, the criteria for affordable housing via the Gateway does not address the housing needs of all islanders, only those eligible via the scheme. By providing a variety of properties on one development, this ensures not only the viability of the scheme, but also funds public realm developments and provides partial funding for future developments. So I am sure islanders would prefer unique developments that offer communal space and create communities where a variety of islanders have an opportunity to live. By developing schemes that are viable, we offer the opportunity for right-sizers, downsizers, families, first-time buyers, etc., to live together and create communities. This Assembly approved the 2 housing delivery vehicles, Andium and the States of Jersey Development Company. Andium has embarked on an ambitious programme of developments, targeting a minimum of 3,000 new homes by 2030, each of which will be accessed by the Housing Gateway. States of Jersey Development Company is a very different vehicle, and its developments are more commercial and involve the regeneration of an area. Regeneration includes significant public realm and infrastructure improvements for the benefit of the wider community. Those additional elements need to be funded, and so the open market provision of housing on such cross-subsidises the construction costs. The College Garden site is the perfect example of a successful development that contained a mix of housing that was entirely sympathetic to the area. I have every confidence that States of Jersey Development Company will deliver similar fantastic developments at South Hill and the waterfront, in which residents and all islanders can take pride. SOJDC advances these schemes under the political oversight of the Regeneration Steering Group, and that group considers, as its name suggests, the regeneration of a site and the interests of the wider community and prospective residents. It is only right that SOJDC contributes to the housing supply for all islanders and is now targeting a minimum of 20% affordable housing on South Hill and the waterfront. A vote in favour of the original amendment from Senator Mezek has the potential to delay the construction on these sites by several months, if not years, as mentioned by the previous speaker, and see 1,100 homes destined for all islanders put at risk. Sir, the original amendment just blurs the lines between our 2 housing delivery vehicles. Allow Andium to focus on what it does best: affordable housing for the Gateway, and SOJDC can focus on different development mixes. The Minister for the Environment mentioned ports plans for the harbour to strengthen capacity and supply chain resilience. These are absolutely vital plans to support the island's future economic stability, as well as delivering the future increase in freight capacity. Part of the funding of this capital programme will come from plans to develop open market homes on the new North Quay and regenerating that area, which then cross-subsidises the harbour improvements. The original amendment, if enacted, would at worst present this cross-subsidising and halt ports' plans, and at best will delay the plans and generate endless debates about what is and what isn't viable. The Minister's amendment requires ports to include 15% subsidised housing in their development. Sir, I urge members to support the Minister's amendment. A vote in favour of the original Senator Mezek's amendment will not make homes more affordable for all islanders, especially those that do not qualify for the Gateway. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. And I'm pleased that Senator Pinnell's speech has probably taken about 10 minutes on mine, because I was going to also focus on the reason behind the delivery, why we chose to deliver certain tranches of rejuvenation and homes in the way we did. And Deputy Pinnell explained it. I want to just focus on the ports of Jersey's responsibilities, and I go back 20 years, sir, to the committee system when I sat for 2 terms on the Harbours and Airports Committee, and we were identifying the long-term investments required to sustain the critical infrastructure that the ports need to operate and to adapt with the modern world, sir. And the prediction then was that tens of millions of pounds would be required, and that was the reason that led to the incorporation, to provide that commercial freedom, to utilise the assets in the best possible way, as Deputy Pinnell explained, to ensure the burden is taken off the taxpayer for that infrastructure cost and can be delivered in other ways, some of it from profits made from the development of their land, sir, and in this case housing, of which a percentage will be affordable housing. And our housing strategy must provide a mix of types, different types of tenures and homes right across the island. This is absolutely necessary, sir, for a balanced, sustainable community where everyone, sir, can access a home that meets their needs. I want to, if I can, sir, just focus a little bit on the Planning and Environment Minister's amendment, because I think this is important, because we all want the same thing. We all want to build as much affordable housing as we possibly can. And there has been a concerning narrative in this island plan debate that we can zone less land around the island for affordable homes and fall back on putting more on state-owned land. And I think this is wrong. It's a great aspiration, but it's not practical. I think Andium, as members have pointed out, have done an absolutely superb job of developing what they inherited, sir, from the old housing department. And we've seen just what can be done there. If anything, we need to put more resources, perhaps, think more carefully about how we allocate states' land that becomes available, so Andium can do more of the good work and expand their portfolio to address the challenges we face, especially in the affordable assisted homes bracket. But we all want to build as many affordable homes as we can. I mean, I do concur with Senator Gorst. Perhaps 15% is a bit light, but it is an absolute minimum, and it was on the back of debates we've recently had. So it would have been rather odd to come back now with a different figure after we've had that debate, and it was a thorough debate. And we did think, and I know that the planning minister has thought long and hard, done a lot of soul searching. Should be 15, 20, 25, 50, but we've got a minimum. With Senator Mezek's amendment, there's no minimum. It's 100%. There's no flexibility there. The plan. If we turn to the planning inspector's report, so page 46, I think it is. I haven't got the page number here, but I just read a paragraph of that out, and it says so that Senator Mezek's amendment seeks to have all states-owned land or states-owned companies' land to be used for affordable housing unless unviable. I mean, this is in the inspector's report, sir. So if it is wrong, sir, then the senator needs to take that up with the inspector. But the planning minister, it says, sir, is not minded to support this amendment, as it supports the premise that as it is regarded as being just too prescriptive. we agree with the Minister, the Inspector goes on to say. However, he supports the premise that underpins the amendment and is looking for a more nuanced approach. The suggested wording in the amendment would allow for exceptions to be made with regard to viability. To allow for a more nuanced approach, the Minister may wish to consider widening the considerations to be taken into account to include matters such as site, specific and community needs. And I think that's what's at the very heart of this debate. And I know that's what's behind the Minister's very well-placed intentions to find a solution to this potential stalemate. So I would urge members to support the amendment. We all want to build as many affordable homes as we can. I predict we will build far more than 15% on a lot of state-owned land, sir, because I'm sure we can make that viable. And perhaps the Minister would, when summing up, sir, just perhaps share some of the ways that we can ensure we do get more than 15% where it is viable, sir. And if we don't, then we create, I think, a bigger problem if we put a very prescriptive ruling that it has to be 100%, because then we will only get affordable housing right across great swathes of state-owned land, which have been put aside for other really important community and other infrastructure uses, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Deputy Ash.
Thank you, sir. I did say earlier in the week, sir, that it would be great if people could stick to the facts on the individual sites and not make political speeches. Ironically, I'm now going to make a political speech, but that is because this isn't on individual sites. I'd also like to thank members for sticking to the facts by and large on the fields. It moved it through quickly and it was an interesting debate. This is, however, sir, as I said, it's an amendment to a political amendment, politically driven. So we've had the phrase housing crisis bandied around now for, well, some considerable time. I was there when this phrase hit its zenith at a chamber lunch, when Deputy Pennell was asked, whilst the PA system was down, so it was an off-the-cuff question given to her, and it was, does she feel there's a housing crisis? And she replied that there was a problem, but she didn't like the word crisis. This, of course, gave the opportunity for certain members of the press and members of the Assembly to leap around, trying to make out that Deputy Pennell had her head in the sand and was unaware of the issue. I found this unfortunate for two reasons, sir. Firstly, she obviously was and is aware of the severity of the situation. And secondly, sir, she deserved better than some of the offensive abuse that has been hurled in her direction. I too, sir, when I'm thinking about it, I don't like the word crisis particularly, but when it's overused. And during the course of this debate, I think Deputy Ward had 4 crises, or maybe even 5 crises going on in Jersey. We hear the press every day you open the newspaper, there's a crisis, an England batting crisis, a shortage of Brussels sprouts at Christmas crisis. Well, and it's probably right that I tell you, in my view, what is a crisis? A crisis, and there's a great example going on. I'll give you this now, sir. It's a tremendous example of what a crisis is. It's 2 million refugees crossing the border of your country that you have to feed, house, and clothe. It's people seeing tanks in the streets, and it's a mother writing a phone number on her child's arm and sending them off in the hope they reach safety. That, in my opinion, sir, is a crisis. We have seen a crisis in Jersey. It's before our time, sir, but it's well remembered, as it should be here, sir. During the war, we saw a crisis where many people fled the island. Others were deported, and some ended up in concentration camps. The harbour was bombed, and people were saved on this island from starvation only by the arrival of a Red Cross ship, the Viga. Yes, that was a crisis, and it's why I object to the word being overused, sir. But if people choose to use it and feel it's appropriate, that of course is entirely their prerogative. I will accept that is what we're going to call it, and I will continue. I wanted to address that early on in what I'm saying, sir, because I feel it's far more important that we address the problem and find a solution to it than mess around deciding what to call it. We have been taking action, of course, as I stated earlier on in this debate, and I believe, if my memory serves, and I'm getting old and I've got this bug, I believe that the Environment Minister said we have over 1,000 homes under construction. Over 1,000. That's at the moment. We've got many more due to commence shortly. So action is being taken. It must be stressed, though, sir, at times Andium and SOJDC have not been helped in this by the delaying actions of the Assembly in placing obstacles in their way, and that is undeniable. Having said all that, there is still an obvious need for much, much more to be done. I fully concede that, and I think the Assembly is in total agreement. And we're also in agreement, sir, that it should be done as soon as possible. What we are not in agreement on is where and how. And I think that's become increasingly apparent as this debate has gone on. And the word NIMBYism, sir, has been bandied around, not just in the Assembly, but in many of the emails we've all received. You probably haven't, sir, but we have. And when you open those emails, sir, we've had a good number that say something along the lines of, I fully realise we need housing urgently and 100% support it, but field 110K brackets B is not it. Do I blame them? Not really, sir. It's human nature, and in some of their cases I agree with them, as I did with some others who didn't want all glasshouse sites to become fair game. But, sir, in acknowledging this, we have had in our midst the NIMBYers NIMBY, the creme de la creme, sir, the prix d'honneur, in the shape of the Reform Party, sir, manoeuvring themselves like a well-oiled rugby pack from debate to debate, hurling the C word around with gay abandon, sir. They have proceeded, and let's go through what they've proceeded to do. They've proceeded to not wish to build any higher, partly because we are told the higher floors will be bought by wealthy people, sir. This ignores the fact that, of course, that a lot of the best high floor views on the island are enjoyed by Andean tenants, in fact, but there you go. Let's not get in the way of a good story. They don't support the parish schemes, even for affordable housing on greenfields. To an extent, I can see their point, but one of their points, as we saw from Deputy Tadier yesterday, was that perhaps these people would like to gift their fields for nothing, because God forbid someone makes any money, sir. They don't want to build in St Helier before we have a park in place and a new school. I, again, may tend to agree that they have a point there, but again, that is restrictive on the time we have to build these houses. They don't want to build on glass houses, sir, because people might make money on that. And apparently we can grow tomatoes on them again, sir, very cheaply, much cheaper than the Spanish. Finally, sir, we had another one, St Brillard's Bay. Don't allow hotels to be sold. Now, I tend to agree with that, and the only reason I voted the other way was because someone pointed out, quite rightly, that these hotels are leveraged against the land value. But that wasn't why they voted against that, sir, or to preserve the bay, as I think everyone in the Assembly would vote for. We would all want to preserve that bay. No, they voted against it, and I think it was Senator Mizek who said it, because luxury flats could be built there, sir, for wealthy people to live in. You see a bit of a trend coming here, sir. We've also Senator Mizek stating the returns we get from Andium to SOJDC. It's a nice thing, doesn't it? The social housing provider providing generous returns, SOJDC, the evil property developer, not providing any. He conveniently omitted, or maybe not conveniently, maybe it slipped his mind, sir, that Andium received $500 million of assets on incorporation. $500 million, loads of housing, loads of rent, whereas SOJDC received 40 million. So from that, sir, it all appears to be right out of the all property is theft playbook. And not excusing the pun, full marks to Deputy Mizek for doing that. I will leave it to states members to see if there's a pattern here in their motives, but my view is that by opposing all the other available sites, the only possible recourse is for states-owned land to be designated 100% affordable housing. Their amendment is therefore a vital part of that strategy, and this amendment is a sensible way to modify it and proceed as we did on South Hill and the waterfront. So, excuse me for one moment. Just having some water, sir. Right. Affordable housing, sir, and let's have a look at it. In reality, affordable housing means subsidised housing. The Reform Party line that open market means unaffordable, and therefore why should government build unaffordable properties on state-owned land, has to be refuted. Open market housing simply means that the housing is unsubsidised. And Senator Gorst has said he has difficulties because 15% is not the maximum we can build, Senator Gorst, and I'm sure you realise that. Have a look now at what we are building, the Limes site that is just commencing opposite the police station there. 100% affordable housing, not 15%, 100%. Ambium are going to build 3,000, and if the Alliance Party has its way, 5,000 houses by 2030. That will be their target. Vast amounts of that will be affordable. A vote in favour of Senator Mezek's amendment, sir, will mean the waterfront and South Hill would have to go back to the drawing board to evidence the viability test yet again. That would delay the delivery of 1,100 homes by possibly another couple of years. This is a strategy by Reform, sir, to create more social housing. It is not a housing strategy. This is a strategy to create more flats in town, not family homes. Fewer homes overall will be built, sir, meaning housing for the vast majority of islanders will be, guess what, more expensive. Development of affordable housing will be delayed because the development of state sites will take longer to come forward compared to the sites that have been identified for rezoning. It is not the best use of taxpayers' money. I'm 100% certain of that, and that's what we're dealing with here. It is owned by the taxpayer. If someone had a car, are they going to sell it for half price because they think someone needs it more than they do? Of course they're not. They're going to make the best use of their possessions, of their property. And that's what I urge members to think of today. I also urge members to vote against this, the amendment eventually, but to vote for the amendment to the amendment. And let's continue to build the much needed housing for islanders as swiftly as we can. So I normally like to quote Churchill, but here I will quote Bob the Builder. Can we do it? Yes, we can. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. And what a joy it is to follow the last speaker who set up a set of straw images in order to knock them down again. But my leader can deal with that. And he did accurately mention the fact that some of us in the party are attached to Jean-Pierre Proudhon, the anarcho-syndicalist from the 1870s, who has a long, proud tradition of trade union work. But to deal with the issue, rather than the spurious issues raised by the last speaker, we're told time and time again that the amendment produced by Senator Mezek is not flexible enough. That somehow there's more flexibility in the minister's proposal than others. And what I want to do is just briefly mention the core of what we're talking about today, which is on page 4 of the amendment, the exceptions. The main argument anticipated against this amendment will be that it could risk rendering some developments unviable if they are not able to produce enough of a financial return to support the development of amenities which do not generate profits. the wording of the new policy is very clear in that it requires homes built to be affordable, except where the provision of only affordable homes would render the development unviable. I put it to members that is as flexible as you can get. That is a very flexible policy that's in the right place, and we should be supporting it. So I'm urging people to vote against the Minister's amendment and to vote for the amendment of Senator Mellor.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment? Yes, Connétable of St Helier.
Thank you, sir. I was becoming concerned yesterday that the Council of Ministers weren't going to speak on this amendment, and that I would have to do the heavy lifting for them. And I've been delighted to hear from several ministers this morning who have put some of the other arguments across that need to be heard. Senator Mezek in his speech asked what evidence of regeneration had been delivered by the Jersey Development Company, and the Treasury Minister has already referred to the Jersey College for Girls development. And I need to remind members that that building stood empty for 15 years while the government scratched its head and successive Council of Ministers failed to do anything about the building. And what the Jersey Development Company delivered at no cost to the taxpayer was a mixed tenure development, which by all accounts is meeting the needs of its many users extremely well. The financial services quarter, which still seems to lack friends out there, the International Finance Centre, with its generous open space, is another example of how the Jersey Development Company applies the profits of its developments to community facilities, in this case to an extremely large area of open space called Trenton Square. And there is no doubt, and we can prove this by looking at developments which took place at the same time, that had that been left to the private sector to deliver, there would have been no open space at all, and that the building would have come up to the pavement line. As it is, we have a marvellous building that is generally regarded as extremely well done. The fourth building is now coming out of the ground, and the only fly in the ointment, if you like, is the decision of the Infrastructure Minister to commit cultural vandalism in front of the building on the wonderful wide pavement that was provided for us to enjoy. The company is also, of course, working on access to Fort Regent, a problem that successive governments have struggled over for decades. Once again, they are applying public money to a range of public needs and requirements, particularly in the urban areas. And I find it depressing that so many speakers will rise to criticise the work of the Jersey Development Company, which is, after all, an arm's length body which we, the government, are in charge of. So if it isn't delivering in any respect, then it's our fault. It's not the fault of the company. But as I say so, I've been impressed with the quality of what they're doing and the fact that community facilities are very high on their agenda. And it is absolutely right to say that their next project, their biggest project, which is the waterfront scheme, the Southwest St Helier master plan, will deliver 1,000 homes. It wasn't going to before. Before it was going to be a mix, and I was looking forward to seeing it, a mix of cultural facilities, but probably a concert hall, lots of open space, swimming pools and so on. But responding to the need of the island, Jersey Development Company have come forward with a mixed tenure proposition of 1,000 homes without stinting, as much as we might have feared, on the community facilities. We are still going to have a lot of open space. We're going to have underground parking. We're going to have a lot of greenery. We're going to have a new swimming pool. We're going to have extraordinarily ambitious remodelling of the sea wall with regard to flood risk in the future. And if I could just correct Deputy Martin, who said that we would lose £50 million of infrastructure if we pass this amendment today, it's actually worse than that. If this amendment is supported and the waterfront scheme has to go back to the drawing board, we risk losing £150 million of community infrastructure investment. That is a lot of money. That's a lot of money to find from other government sources if we decide that every home built on the waterfront should fit the requirement of affordability. I was speaking to someone around the time of the South Hill debate about where we effectively had this debate in miniature at that time. And I put it to them, I said, how do you feel about a flat up at South Hill? And they said, well, that would be great to move into. And I said, well, how would you feel if for the price of that flat on South Hill, we could build 3 somewhere else? How would you feel about it then? And they said, well, it would make more sense to build 3 somewhere else. And it's as simple as that, sir. The development of open market homes, and some members like to call them luxury apartments, but the fact is people of all income levels want to move into St Helier. And if they want to move into St Helier and they want to live in what's being called a luxury apartment, and if those are going to pay for the development of 3 or 4 affordable homes elsewhere, then what is our problem? I find this view of housing that's been around since the Albert Quay development. I remember we had the same arguments about that. And I suppose it will always go on. And I just hope that the argument will always be won by the people who believe that we need to build a range of homes for the range of people that want to live in our island. Now, I do find it difficult to defend the current government's record on regeneration. And it's a pity the Chief Minister isn't in the Assembly today to hear this. But we have failed to come up with, from the Regeneration Steering Group, an urban task force, investment in St Helier. It is true that the Jersey Development Company are funding the North of Town Master Plan, which is now starting in Midvale Road, 11 years late, having been turned down by a previous infrastructure minister. But it is something, and Jersey Development Company were happy to fund that. Of course, that should have been funded by government, a long time ago. And the Regeneration Steering Group simply has failed to prioritise regeneration schemes in St Helier. Yet I continue to bang the drum because I sit around that table, and I've been promised that there will be an urban task force that will be able to deliver more schemes, and we'll have funding for places like Harvard Power, which has been waiting for investment in vital public infrastructure and amenities, not just for a newly surfaced carriageway, I might add, but they're looking for far more in Harvard Power to make the lives of everyday islanders more pleasant to live. So I think there is there's a lot of talk today about how we must support the amendment. I agree with previous speakers who pointed out that the 15% is not a target, it's a minimum. We're already seeing the States of Jersey Development Company exceeding that target. It would be probably better if we didn't have the numbers. It's a bit like numbers with the population debate where people talk about a cap and they impose a cap and then they find they can't meet the cap. But the fact is, if we approve this today, we will put back, in particular, the waterfront scheme by a year or possibly longer. And those 1,000 homes that are ready to be got underway will simply fall away. So as Deputy Ash said, we will end up with less housing rather than more. But I'm going to finish by just commenting that almost every speaker in this debate has praised Andiam Homes' ability to deliver. And I absolutely agree with that, and I've been a champion of Andiam Homes myself in many debates. But I would just remind members who've spoken, and this includes the Council of Ministers as well as the Reform Party, that we have coming up in this debate an amendment which will prevent Andiam Homes from delivering their vision of doubling the size of the Millennium Town Park. And I think that's a great shame, and I hope the members who are supporting Andiam now will support me when I oppose that amendment, which would effectively take away from the thousands of new residents of St Helier the joys and essential benefits to quality of life that will come from Andiam Homes being allowed to achieve their vision in the north of town. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conrad Tarb. Deputy St Martin.
Thank you, sir. And I wasn't going to speak, but I'm speaking because of something that Deputy Ash said that's upset me greatly. It's not on housing, really. Deputy Ash said that we don't have a crisis in housing in Jersey. What we have is a crisis in Ukraine, sir, and I could not disagree more. What we have in Ukraine is a disaster of catastrophic proportions. Definition of a disaster is a serious problem occurring over a short or long period of time that causes widespread human, material, economic and environmental loss which exceeds the ability of the affected community or society to cope using its own resources. A crisis is a time of difficulty when a difficult or important decision has to be made. So what we have in Ukraine is not a crisis, it's a disaster. But what we have in Jersey is a housing situation which needs important and difficult decisions to be made. And I'd just like to point that out. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment? I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
Thank you, sir. All the debates up to now have all been very focused, very straightforward, and choices, as I said at the beginning of the debate, choices that members have made. I think members have handled those debates well. This one has been completely different. It's turned into a mixture of high politics, hyperbole, which almost, I think, has been permitted in the debate to subsume what is the underlying planning issue, which is why we're debating the island plan. I distance myself from those remarks that are attributed to those who have what I call a right-wing, open market, free market perspective. I also distance myself from the alternative view. And what I always seek is compromise. I find ways forward, solutions to problems. And what the debate has done is expose those divisions. Personally, I think that having arrangements where government manages a free market economy, working for the public good, is the kind of aspiration that people share. I see shaking of heads, but I think that is the best way of pursuing life's decisions. And so it's unfortunately it's clouded the issue of which I was hoping we would have a debate about the substance of the amendment, what it does and what it helps us achieve in the island plan, which is fundamental. Its purpose is to ensure that land is used in the best interest of our community, because we have a finite land area where we don't have enough land, and that's what the plan seeks to manage it. Now, I'd hope we'd had. I am now worried that we could get to a situation from some of the speeches where even if my amendment to Senator Mesick's amendment, which is intended to be a real constructive improvement and find a compromise, even if that's accepted, some members are likely to throw out the amendment and end up with nothing. And I think the hyperbole in this debate and the importance of ensuring that we I believe, achieve and the way I'd put it as this, as many affordable homes as is possible to do without creating wall-to-wall ghettos in the kind of 1960s housing estates where I was brought up in, without the public realm and the facilities, and then to make those places good places to live. And when we do large regeneration developments, we need that. We need homes, we need other amenities in it, we need all those things that make life good to work. And that involves working with the private sector in constructive, and that's been done all over, as I said in my earlier remarks and when I was opening the debate, all over Britain successfully. And if you like, in the modern parlance, it's levelling up It's urban regeneration. That's the principles of how it works. You work together in that. It isn't an all or nothing. It is not a binary situation. So if we end up with nothing about this in the plan, we would have failed. I'm urging members now to go with my compromise. Because I think we had that discussion. It was a really good discussion at the planning inquiry. Senator Farnham has quoted the report, and I urge members to read it. And Senator Mesic brought to the table an amendment to the policies of the plan that seek to ensure that he used the words that all homes developed in state-owned land or whatever should be affordable unless otherwise is to ensure viability. Now, so his intention is right, but of course the planning view is, and my view would be, it's entirely inflexible to have such a, because there's no criteria. It doesn't tell you what viability means. Viability could be anything. It could be, well, you know, we want to have some other dreamland project you want to do. It's got nothing to do with this development. But equally, it could be focused on it. So what I sought to do, and the inspector invited me and my officers to think about it. Think how we can find ways of having a form of words in the policy which would enable the planning system to work and make those judgments downstream. So that's what I was seeking to do. And so I think I'd be astonished if nobody in the Assembly thinks that disagrees that we should get as much affordable homes as is possible. I hope nobody does. So that's why I'm trying to do it, is to get the flexibility. And it requires, I think, the viability. My amendment says, and it puts a criteria on that viability test. It says to provide public realm and community infrastructure delivery. That's what they meant the words. Ironically, both the amendments we've been talking about are pretty short. Unlike some of the other amendments that have gone to pages, these are just a few paragraphs. And those are the words. Those are key words for me. And I think the Attorney General's advice was really, really helpful. Because I struggled a bit when I brought this amendment, because to be honest with you, my notes included a lot of, I suppose, to be honest with you, corporate stuff that I think really doesn't help. I'm not standing here as a member of the Alliance Party or anything like that trying to promote the form. I'm trying to find a way through this. But the Attorney General lit that spark he gave with his eye. He said clearly, members asked him, well, can the words of the Minister's amendment work? Can they be done? Can they be used helpfully? And he said that and it was interesting, he said that, and I think it was under either Senator Mesic's amendments or as amended by the one I'm bringing and from standing here today summing up, that the Environment Minister can issue guidance, and that has legal effect, on how that viability criteria will be applied in practice in deciding any decision. It will help, that guidance will help any decision maker making a decision on a planning application. Because what supplementary planning guidance does, it provides, I think, a phrase I can't remember use it, provides more colour, it was used. What it does, it provides clarification, more detail about what's intended by such a policy. Because I said the island plan policies, you know, they are primary. They carry that top status. But supplementary planning guidance helps explain how that's used in practice. And that's why the law gives the Environment Minister the power to bring supplementary planning guidance. And so my preference is, and this is the intention of my amendments, is that I think the Environment Minister will need, I think, specific guidance, explicit instructions from the states of Jersey, the the mandate as to what that should cover. And having that decision that it covers public realm and infrastructure delivery, rather than be silent on the subject, as Senator Mezik's underlying amendment proposes, that's important for the planning system to work. Now, there's a supplementary thing about, because the question is, well, you know, who decides about what that public realm and infrastructure delivery is? And I think it talks about, it makes mention of the government plan. And of course, the government plan is a separate process. It runs, whereas the island plan is a once, you know, this time it's 3 years, but in other years it's 10. The government plan runs continually. It's a rolling programme, and it can be amended annually. It's amended annually through government processes, and also members can do amendments to it during the year by proposition. They could do that. So there are mechanisms. Now, it refers to that. Those mechanisms are not worked out. They don't necessarily have to be. It says in accordance. The wording is there. But the key thing is that it gives us mechanisms where there can be greater clarity on what infrastructure and public delivery realm we're going to need. Now, I'll be honest with you. I couldn't give you a list of all the goodies in the South West St Helier planning application, but I know there's a lot. And those sort of things will be part and parcel of the work that goes on. And of course, you know, I think the reality, my personal position, I don't think in the past we've handled, I'm with Deputy of St Mary. I don't think we've kind of covered ourselves with glory in the way we've managed our state's assets. We've got good bits like Andy and Home have done incredibly well, and to me, you know, so that probably is one argument for going with my amendment, because Andy and Homes have been having to deal with the open market without such a, you know, compete. Well, when you've got policies that are here, Senator Mezik's as amended by mine, I think it's going to help. It's going to help them carry on doing a really good job. I have to say, I do draw, you know, I would not go along with the Ports of Jersey, I have to say, because at the moment the island plan does not include the proposals and plans of the Ports of Jersey. Those, I think, will be issues of public land that will go into the next bridging island plan, because there are big issues about ports and so on, and that will affect the town. So I would say that. Now, Deputy Labby, I think people are worried about the South West St Helier proposal, which is at the moment as a planning application. It has been not progressed because, frankly, we've got the hospital planning inquiry. We can't deal with that, two major inquiries like that at once. And, frankly, it wouldn't be sensible during election time. So we have to have that public inquiry once the elections are over, once all the new ministers are in place, and then I think the inquiry can proceed properly. And I think, so Deputy Russell Labby said it won't have any effect. Well, I have to be quite straight with the Assembly. That is not true. I'm sure it was well-intentioned from Deputy Russell Labby, but the facts are is that whatever the policies are in the island plan, debated here and agreed upon, when the plan is adopted, those planning policies apply to all planning decisions that take place subsequently. Now, my view is I don't think it necessarily should cause the problems for the project, because I believe it is possible, it should be possible, for supplementary planning guidance to be issued, I think, which is well-informed, objective, to have that in place by the time the planning inquiry takes place. And that will help the SOG, the OGC, prepare their evidence of viability, because the issue of viability would need to be a factor in the terms of reference for the inquiry as I see it, and also that will allow the planning inspector to prepare for it, and if there's, and also at the same time, of course, that's in parallel to work on the government plan. So I don't see that there's a frustrating factor in there. It will help us have greater transparency and greater provide confidence that the decision that we're making about the use of that public land is absolutely, I think, completely transparent. And so I think that is in line with what members of this Assembly do want. So I think, you know, what the sort of things could come into the nuts and bolts of viability? Well, cross subsidies I've talking about. Intersite, cross, you know, between one site and another can appear. And also then the issue about unrelated costs and so on. All of those things can be included. Now, it won't be me who's drafting the supplementary planning guidance. I will leave it to better brains than mine, but it will go to consultation. It will have to go to consultation before it's adopted. So I think it can be done. So we can quite quickly put in place sensible mechanisms to do so. And I think Senator Mezik's proposition, you know, and look, I mean, we've had so many partisan views of anti-reform and this, that. I distance myself from all that. Senator Mezik's amendment has addressed an important subject, as I said, how land is used in the best interest of the community. Personally, I regret that we've had this split between town and rural developments, the idea that we don't have to have developments in the countryside because we need that housing mix. We need the housing mix. We've got larger families, we've got need for larger homes, we've got a whole mix of things. We have to get that mix right. It isn't one or the other. We need both. We need both. We always have needed both. But anyway, it's a shame that kind of, but there, look, put that aside. We're now having to decide on an amendment to Senator Mezik's amendment, which I think is an important component, as amended, in this plan. And I hope members will adopt my amendment, but further on, I really do hope that that amendment stays in the plan later on. So I'll call for the appel on the amendment.
The appel has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. Those joining the meeting via the Teams link are invited to cast their votes in the chat channel, and I ask the greffier to open their voting for members in the chamber.
Sir, can I raise the defo on Deputy Doublé, please?
Yes. Members agree to do that? Yes. If all members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, then ask the greffier to close the voting. And I can announce that the amendment has been adopted, 30 votes for, 16 votes contra. 30 votes for, 16 votes contra.
Can we have them read out both ways, please, sir?
Yes.
Those voting for in the chamber Senators Farnham and Moore, the Connétables of St Lawrence, St Bralard, Grouville, St Peter, St Wannes, St Martin and St Clement. Deputies Martin, Lewis, Pinnell, St Wanne, Doublé, St Mary, Young, Morel, Guida, Lahegara and Ayer. Those voting for in the chat. The Connétable of St Helier and St John, the Deputy of St John, Senator Ferguson, Deputy Truscott, Deputy Labby, Deputy Ash, the Connétable of Trinity, Deputy of St Peter, the Deputy of Trinity, and the Deputy of Grouville. On those voting contre, in the chat, Deputy Pershar, the Connétable of St Saviour, Deputy Alves, Senator Gorst, Deputy Tadier, Senator Valois. Sorry, I think I'm mistakenly, and the Constable of St John, I think I said he was a pour before, but he was a contre, sorry, and Deputy Higgins. And those voting contre in the chamber, Senators Pallett and Mezek, Connétable of St Mary, Deputy Southern, Deputy of St Martin, Deputy Ward, Pamplin and Gardner.
Thank you. We now return to the amendment as amended. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment as amended? No member wishes to speak on the amendment as amended. Then I close the debate. And is the appel called for? The appel has been called for on the amendment as amended. Members might return to their seats. Those joining the meeting via the Teams link may cast their votes in the chat channel, and ask the greffier to open the voting for members in the chamber. All members have the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment as amended has been adopted unanimously, 44 votes for. Now we now move to Amendment 103. This is a late amendment. Members will recall that we had a late amendment last week. This amendment deals with the Five Oaks Master Plan. Members will recall that under Article 4A of the Planning and Building Jersey Law, the Minister may propose an amendment to the island plan without the usual lodging period being applied, but only if the States agrees. The Minister has lodged the 103rd Amendment, which was circulated last week and published in the usual way. Minister, do you propose, do you seek the permission of the Assembly to debate this amendment now?
Yes, please, sir. I apologise. This is brought late. Frankly, it was omitted and it became obvious during the debates that it should have been there. So I'm asking the Assembly to debate it, please.
Is this seconded? Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak on the proposition that this matter be debated now? Thank you. Will members agree on a standing vote that this matter can be members for? Thank you very much. Thank you. I invite the greffier to read the proposition. The amendment.
After the words "the Draft Island Plan 2022 to 25," insert the words "except that after policy H5, provision of affordable homes," on page 194, add the following. Five Oaks has evolved into a significant suburban centre, providing a range of accommodation, but with a particular concentration of family housing. It sits at a major confluence of traffic routes into and out of the town, and has a number of commercial sites within its midst. There is considered to be a legitimate need to undertake a specific piece of work to assess and review the planning issues in this area with the local community and other stakeholders, to develop and adopt a master plan to guide its future development and to improve local community infrastructure. This should, in particular, include a review of the need for and provision of public open space, community facilities, and travel and transport improvements, and which might consider the future development and use of employment sites in the area. Proposal, Five Oaks Master Plan. The Minister for the Environment will bring forward a master plan for Five Oaks during the bridging plan period, in consultation with key stakeholders, including the parish, Andiam Homes, other landowners, local residents and their children, and businesses, which will include consideration of travel and transport improvements, particularly for active travel, walking and cycling, the provision of community facilities and open space, and future employment land opportunities.
Minister for the Environment.
Thank you, sir. I think this is this proposition seeks to add in what we call a proposal in the plan. The things in the green boxes, and they are a commitment by the minister in lifetime of the plan to do certain works, and it's quite important to have that in, because particularly these significant pieces of work will require, of course, funding and resource. And I think members have often spoken about in the past that things have been put in plans that don't happen, and that's something that I'm determined should not happen. I think there's a number of things prompted this. I should have realised it earlier, but I live in the west of the island, so I don't go through the Five Oaks area very much, but of course a lot of members do. And Deputy Lewis showed me the congested nature of the pavements, particularly with housing development in that area. Now, I made it quite plain that this proposal is absolutely not dependent on any zonings. In fact, we do have some zonings in that area which still remain, but in any event, they're obviously reduced in volume, but nonetheless they're there. And also there are these major landowners and schemes of redevelopment schemes going on. And so I think it is a good a period to look at what can be done, particularly about active travel, walking and cycling. And of course we've got the intensification of what's planned at the Sanction with Andium. And so I think we can factor in a piece of work, or the planning officers in consultation with all of the parties listed in the proposal. I think I would add in schools, because there's no question that the issue about schools provision and open space and children are absolutely crucial there. I'd be surprised if it's controversial, sir, and there's any contention, but I make a proposal there to include this in the plan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is the amendment seconded? Thank you. Deputy Lewis.
Thank you, sir. I welcome this further amendment, sir. I've spoke to the Minister of Environment at length on this, and this is actually very, very welcome, the Five Oaks Master Plan. It does say in the Minister's report, it sits on a major confluence of traffic. Confluence being Latin for gridlock. It's not really, it means the meeting of rivers, which actually is quite appropriate on approaching the Five Oaks area. That from Bagatelle Road, there's a series of small cottages on the left, and we've had to actually install what we call orcas, which are thick rubber blocks painted white and black, just to stop the big heavy trucks from taking slices out of the walls and removing the drain pipes, which has happened quite a few times. So as you're driving along towards the Five Oaks roundabout, to the left, obviously, is St Saviour's Road, St Saviour's Hill. The next left will be Rue-la-Dame. Straight in front, we have La Grande Rue de Saint-Martin. And to the right, obviously, it's Princess Tower Road. So it is a major confluence. It is a major junction. My Department of Infrastructure have done major works up there in recent times to stabilise the road there, but the traffic is just absolutely horrendous. And as the Minister has pointed out, that we have actually most of the schools, island schools, in and around St Saviour. So with the morning rush hour, plus the schools coming in and leaving, it is a very, very busy junction. And with the estates that are going up, I believe that La Sainte-Chaine is going to be completely redeveloped in the not too distant future, plus a few fields will be built on. Plus, further down the road, obviously, we have St Saviour's Hospital site will come online, so there'll be more and more pressure on this junction. So I thank the Minister for bringing this forward. I'm more than happy to work with him on it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Pershard.
Thank you, sir. I'm speaking very briefly on this item, both as the Assistant Minister for the Environment and Planning, but also as a Deputy whose district covers a portion of Five Oaks. I think District 3 and District 2 converge at the roundabout. We border each other there. So I think what's something I'd like to just add to the comments of the Minister for Infrastructure is that it's really, really important that that the members of the public who live in the area and for whom this is a very emotive issue understand that there will be an opportunity for them to share their views. And that is a really important part of this particular amendment, because I think sometimes it can be confusing when we hear things, when members of the public hear that we will be bringing forward a master plan. What that doesn't mean is that the intention is that we're going to build lots and lots of things in that area, and that's we're going to bring forward a plan to show all the new buildings we're going to put there. That is absolutely not what's being proposed here. And the reason I'm saying that is because I have had communication from my parishioners who live in this area, who are concerned about any more development taking place because of the reasons outlined, to do with traffic, at rush hour, at school times. And I think it's really important that members of the public understand that this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to raise your concerns, to share your views, and to participate in the democratic process. And that those engagements do have a direct impact on outcome. And we've seen that through the various public engagement mechanisms that we've used for different things. I'm shortly going to be proposing the carbon neutral roadmap, which is a result of a people-powered approach in its entirety. And I can say wholeheartedly that engaging the members of the public who've engaged with that process have had a direct impact on subsequent policy development decisions. And so I would just urge any parishioner of mine or of District 2 who feel affected by developments in Five Oaks and who are concerned about that, to actively engage with this process when it's brought forward, because it's not about building, it's about a holistic approach to improving the environment for everyone who lives there. And that might include redevelopment of some buildings, but it also includes a very serious commitment to improving active travel and to improving the quality of life of people in that area. So I'm obviously, as part of the ministerial team, the environment, I'm obviously supportive of this, but as a deputy, I welcome it, because I think that Five Oaks is an incredibly emotive issue, particularly for the residents of the area, partly because of the concentration of schools on the doorstep. And so I welcome any opportunity to have the views of those people magnified and heard in relation to any future development of the site. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. And when I saw this amendment come in, I'm really pleased that the Minister has mentioned schools, because I did actually contact the GREF and ask if I could amend it to add schools in there, and I was told that that wasn't something we could do. So I'm delighted that the Minister has committed to that. I know it's not part of the wording, but if he could maybe just touch on, in his summing up, touch on how he will ensure that that is included as part of the master plan. Because I think sometimes there's this separation, isn't there, between the schools and the residents, when actually we're all part of the same community, whether it's families that live in the area or families whose children attend school in the area, and often both, of course. But I think we do need to remember when this consultation is being carried out for the master plan, I think that we need to remember that in terms of consulting in schools, we need to consult different groups of people in the schools. So, of course, staff need to be consulted, and I'm sure the leadership of schools will be spoken with and part of that conversation, but also parent groups within those schools, so that the PTAs, because of course, in terms of travel to school, parents and teachers are often travelling to schools at very different times of the day, and therefore encounter different issues on the roads. And the children that attend those schools, of course, some of those children, because there are several private schools in the area, some of those children won't be children who live with their families in the parish. So that will be a different element to the consultation to, of course, those children who live in the area and have their homes there with their families. So I just wanted to ask the Minister to take those points on board, if he will, and I'm looking forward to this consultation for this master plan. I think it will be really welcomed by the residents in the area, because I think all the deputies have seen that there is a willingness to contribute to in terms of moulding what's going to happen in that community. So I thank the Minister for this amendment, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And really, it was, well, two things. First, a slight aside, which is the Infrastructure Minister mentioned having to put rubber padding, so to speak, on corners because the road narrows there. I'd also suggest maybe he asks the team at DVS under his leadership to stop licensing vehicles which are clearly far too big for the roads of Jersey, sir. The other thing that I wanted, which was really a question for the Environment Minister, because I certainly will be supporting the master plan, no doubt, but it was obviously, as an assembly, we chose not to zone the fields at Five Oaks on both sides of the junction, two different sides of the junction, for housing. As a result, there won't be kind of money going into sustainable development in that area. My assumption is that this amendment for the master plan has been brought forward initially with the view that those fields would be zoned and therefore money would be available to develop the master plan. But my reading of it now is that there wouldn't be money available to develop the master plan. So the master plan might be developed, but then actually implementing the master plan, because we didn't zone fields in St Saviour. So could he just address that and advise the Assembly as to how, once the master plan is developed, how it will actually be implemented? Where will that money come from, sir? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Labby.
Thank you, sir. I was asked earlier in this sitting for an update on the plans for Les Cinq Chênes. So now would seem to be an appropriate time to do that for the Assembly. Les Cinq Chênes is fast approaching the end of its life, really, its operational life, and refurbishment is not an option. That would be too uneconomical. So the plans are still in formation, but we will see a redevelopment of the site commencing probably in 3 years' time. A contractor we're hoping to select a contractor probably in Q3 this year. Now, the residents of the estate have all been informed through correspondence, and once the new design development is finalised, there will be a visit to their homes from an Andim representative in person to explain the plans and how it's intended to work, and to limit the impact of the redevelopment on the existing residents. So this is a major project and one that will be undertaken in phases over several years. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Deputy. Connetab of St Saviour.
Yes, thank you, sir. This is this is much needed because it is a mess, even without the thing. But I would like the parishioners to be involved. I would like, normally we're very good, we have hearings, parishioners can turn up and they fill out forms to say whether they live in the parish or whether they pass through it. And I would hope that this will continue because I think this is very, very, very important for the people who live in the St Saviour's area, not only in the Five Oaks, but who have to come through it. And they're parishioners, they pay their rates, and they expect to have something for it. So I would hope that this will happen. I also hope that it will happen before they decide to do the building works, because you're going to have lorries trundling up and down, and diggers, and all sorts, when they start. I would also like to know that they've sold homes on the front, on the roadside, and they've retained some of the garden. And I'm wondering if they've retained some of the garden so that they can have a cycle route or a safer route to schoolwork. And the people who own the Morrison site have been very, they're very worried about what is going to go on the roundabout because they do not want to sell the land, they do not want to sell the site. So there's a lot of consultation to go on, and I am a little bit disappointed because Deputy Lewis has just said about the building, and yet he withdrew one of the fields to allow them to be passed for building. So there will be building in St Saviour, and that is a bit of a shame. And I would like this to happen if it is going to go through the master plan, and it seems this is a very good idea, and I'm glad Deputy Pershall has been in favour of it, that it's done and put into situ before we start all the building on the Les Chenes site. So it won't be my problem, it will be the next company, but I would hope something probably will be done with consideration for the parishioners of St Saviour and not just the people passing through. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Connetab. Does any other member wish to speak on this? Yes, Deputy Pampin.
Thank you, sir. The only thing I want to add to the debate, sir, is the item that's come up a few times around this area, and I've spoken to the Minister about this and the Minister for Infrastructure, is the future of what happens with the St Saviour Hospital site, sir, which still currently is where we deliver our services to support our islanders with their mental health. And there is still, thanks to the work that we did, my colleagues on the scrutiny panel, to transfer the Orchard House site to a new facility across the field at Clinic Penal. Fortunately, that work is slightly delayed, but we still want to see it come through as soon as possible, and we will continue to push that work until the end of this term. So there will still be, for the years to come, a facility and also the other facilities nearby for those who get their support for different versions of mental health and mental illness. And those facilities will remain there until a purpose-built facility is built with the new hospital. And I know it is very premature, and I know it's exciting. We all get very excited about state-owned buildings, and the St Saviour Hospital site is one that does provide an opportunity. But I just want to add a bit of realism back that whole area, until we have secured a purpose-built, cohabited mental health facility site on the site of a new hospital, and has to be put back into the reality of the context when we're talking about this part of St Saviour. Because until the hospital starts to be built, until that facility starts to come fruition, I just want to add that reality of context. That is not a guarantee, unfortunately. And I just want to add that to the context that whole area must continue to support the much needed facilities that are needed until a new version does come about. And I just want that to be considered in this master plan, all the surrounding areas. And I would just add to that a little bit further down. We have La Verine, which is a much used road up into the parish, especially at school time, as people will know, dropping their young children to school. But it also is used by many young people as a walkway, and we're so grateful to the parishioners who provided a bit of their land, so there's a bit of safe passage. So I add that to the mix, that all the surrounding areas that touch into Five Oaks are talked about, and I'm sure that the parishioners of St Saviour will make sure that happens. But I just wanted to add that context to this particular debate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member speak on this amendment? I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank all members for speaking. It's a lot of really good points have been made there. And obviously, St Saviour members and also the Housing Minister. So I'll try and pick those up. Absolutely, the issue about schools. That is an omission. I should have picked that up earlier. I give a commitment that I will ensure it's included within the draft terms of reference. And I think, having listened to the members, I think it would be my plan to ask the officers to get the terms of references for the piece of work, planning work, in draft, and then forward it to St Saviour, I think St Saviour members, for their comment as a kind of starter for 10. I think that's quite helpful. And for me, I you know, there's no question. The issue really, and I think Deputy Pershard mentioned this is an exercise, or should be, in what I would call community planning, where community has a stake in what goes on, what major changes in an area, where you've got an area which is likely to be subject to some change, or there are pressures on that really need to have that kind of focus. And so, but schools, of course, are a community themselves. You know, you've got staff, you've got leadership, you've got parents, and you've got children. And so that they're a community. They really are plugged into the area. So that is so important. In fact, I would say, you do any piece of planning work and you don't engage with the schools, you've messed up, really. So, and of course, this will be the way in which master plans would work, the way I would see this, is that it needs to be professionally done, i.e. you need to have people who do this sort of thing with the skills and experience to do that. I think we have had master plans before. They've not all succeeded, to be frank. Norfolk Town master plan we had. We've had plans for the waterfront. A lot of those haven't seen the light of day. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't be smiling at that, but I mean, it's not an easy exercise. One has to make sure that what you get out of it is useful. But they are going to have to be funded. And so I think the question of timing has come up there. When can this be done? We can certainly get the terms of reference together pretty quick. But in terms of funding, we've got what we plan to do in the Kennervay as well. And so I would be dependent on what we can free up from our Treasury Minister budgets through contingencies. We'll have to see. But either way, I think this issue of, I mean, timing is important. The commitment in the proposal is that it will be done during the 3-year bridging plan. And of course, I can see the pressures, having heard from the Housing Minister, that there's obviously extensive work to happen there, and we're phasing. And so I do think there is a real benefit in bringing the work forward during the early part of the Bridging Island Plan period. So I think also, of course, the Connet Harbour was kind enough to mention the fact there are, I can't remember the field numbers that weren't included within the propositions to remove them from the plan, so they're still there. Those are, I think there's one field which is quite close, immediately adjacent to the boundary of Five Oaks. I can't remember the field number that is in. So there will be work there, but of course, again, that's work that is likely to, those sites are not going to happen tomorrow. Each of those sites will have to have planning briefs, there have to be consultation, they'll have to go through a series of stages of work which obviously will start as soon as possible, but there's a lot of sites. And so I think that will be towards, I would have said some of that won't really get into gear. Well, no, that's not the way of putting it. Probably by the end of the year, you'll see those drafts out there. But of course, the developments themselves, as I said earlier on, they will be during the lifetime of the plan, during 3 years. Deputy Pamplin asked about St Saviour's Hospital. This is one that I need. It gives me a good opportunity to put the records straight. Although that has been mentioned, this site is not in the island plan. This is not in the Bridging Island plan. And the reason why that is because it's still in health operational use. And it can't be developed, or it's not been freed up for development, until the health minister advises otherwise. And I think that's the right situation. There are lots of opportunities at St Saviour's on that site, lots of aspirations in the community, and I think it will need its own planning brief. And I think, personally, the timescale of that, this is my view, and the Housing Minister will be disappointed to that, but I think it's probably likely to be in the next island plan and not during this planning period. That, obviously, won't be for me. There will be a hot debate about that, I think, in the future. So, sir, I think I've covered the points that members made, but thank you for all of their comments, and I'm grateful for them, and I'm sure they will help. Oh, cycle routes, absolutely. Partly key to this is helping children get to school. There's no question. At the moment, it's a nightmare. We've got to find opportunities, a way to do that in a more sustainable way. Thank you. I'll make the proposition. Sorry, Do
you ask the appel?
Please, sorry, sir, I lost my words a minute.
Thank you, Minister. The appel has been called. 4 members reminded to return to their seats. Those joining the meeting via the Teams link are asked to cast their votes in the chat channel, and ask the greffier to open the voting for members in the chamber. Four members the opportunity of casting their votes. Then ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that the amendment has been adopted unanimously, 40 votes for. We now move to the 17th amendment, lodged by the Deputy of St Martin, and ask the greffier to read the amendment.
After the words "the Draft Island Plan 2022-25," insert the words "except that." A. Within Policy H6, Supported Housing, after the words "proposals for the development of supported homes," including, there should be inserted the words "age-restricted homes for people over 55. B. Within Policy H6, after the first paragraph, there should be inserted the following new paragraph. To support the provision of homes that help meet the needs of an ageing society, the following sites are specifically zoned for the provision of age-restricted over 55 homes, and their development for any other use will not be supported. 1. Field MN 489, La Longue Rue, St Martin, 1.3 hectares, 7.2 verges, to provide homes for rent to be administered by St Martin's Parish. C. The Draft Island Plan 2022-25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon the adoption of A and B. And D. The Draft Bridging Island Plan Proposals Map Part A, Planning Zones, should be amended to reflect the adoption of A.
Deputy of St Martin.
Thank you, sir, and I hope it won't take too long making this proposition. Members may well remember that what seems like an awfully long time ago now, but not long after the start of this debate, I withdrew an amendment to put retirement homes on a field in St Martin's. That field was 410, and members may remember that was a field alongside St Martin's Catholic Church, and it became apparent during the inspection in public that this field may well go for affordable housing, and St Martin's as a parish wants to support anybody who needs a home, and we and I were quite happy to withdraw my amendment on field 410 and allow it to go forward for affordable housing, because we want to help young families to have homes for the future. Here is a chance now with this amendment to provide some homes for over 55s in St Martin's. Originally 410 had been the place that we might have done that, but as I've said, we want families to make their home in the parish, and why wouldn't they want to? Because in St Martin we have the most fantastic facilities with our village green, our shops, supermarket, vet, doctor, pharmacy, church, pub, parish administration, and not least our village tea room. But sir, we have great facilities, but we also have great demand for housing, and especially housing for over 55s. I took the opportunity to speak to our senior procurer yesterday, and at the moment on our books we have 50 people looking for units of retired housing in St Martin's. We could more than double what we currently have and still not feel the demand. Sir, in my view, and talking to people on the street, we know population and housing are the two most important things, and we have here the opportunity to build homes for people to retire into, but it is my view, sir, that every home we build is another home that helps to solve the housing crisis that I spoke about earlier. Every person who takes up a retirement home leaves another unit behind, a unit that can be used by others, and a unit that can be left while the new person right sizes into a retired or development such as I'm proposing here. So I want to build sites moving forward. I want to help people with housing, and every site is difficult. I appreciate that. But we do here, sir, have a site that is up against existing facilities. It's not dissimilar to 410, the field on the other side of the St Martin's Catholic graveyard. It is adjacent to the current retirement homes that we have, but it's not alongside any roads. It's an extension of the village, if you like, and an extension of the existing facility. The access to it would be through our existing retirement homes, so we don't need to create new accesses onto the Green Lane, and because it comes through the existing homes, it would be quiet like it is now. I'm not going to say this site is out of this location is out of sight, sir, but you do have to work quite hard to be able to see where it is. Unlike 410, which we've agreed, which is alongside a road, this site is not alongside a road. Agriculturally, you have to access it through going through another field, and you only really get to see it if you concentrate very hard and go into the depths of the Green Lane, so it's almost out of sight. Unlike the vast majority of the other sites we've had proposed in this last 7 days, sir, I've not received, or I believe anybody's received, any complaints or objections to this site, and I think that's important. Sir, we don't want to build on green fields, but we need to accept that voting to build affordable homes only on state-owned land, if we do that, the parishes and the country parishes will get very little, if not nothing. And we certainly don't and won't get sheltered housing in those country parishes such as St Martin. So I very much hope that members are going to take a view on this. St Martin have withdrawn their objection to the Affordable Homes Amendment on Field 410. I hope the members are going to support me with this field. As I say, it's very similar to 410 on the other side of the graveyard. I've highlighted a few reasons why I believe it is, and I just leave this one item with States members before we start the debate. States members will know I'm a farmer. I'm a great I have great sympathy with farmers, and I want to do what I can to help them. I know they'll have a view on this field, and it is 7 burgees. It is a good-sized field. I've said that it's not easily accessed from the road. In fact, you have to go through another field owned by somebody else to get to it. But I just make this point, sir. This is a potato field. And there are 11 potato farmers on this island. They farm roughly 14,500 burgees of potatoes. That means on average 1,300 burgees each. This field would be less than half of 1% of any average potato farmer's land. I know 7 burgees are significant. It's a good sized field, the sort of field that farmers want to work, easy, square. But retired homes, alongside retired homes, this is the site that we will go back to time and time again as an extension to our existing facilities for our retired and elderly parishioners. So I ask members to think about that. I very much hope they're going to be able to support me, sir, and I look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Is amendment seconded? Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Yes, Conatava St Martin.
Thank you, sir. I fully support this amendment for the over 55s. We've got a long waiting list of parishioners to downsize. And we have parishioners, and this is no lie, we have parishioners quite often phoning me up in tears or speaking to the parish secretary in tears who desperately want to move. In February, I attended the senior citizens meals and spoke to people who have 3-bedroom houses at Mofor who dearly would like to downsize, but they have nowhere to go to. They feel too old to cope in the houses they live in, but don't want to move out of the parish and all the support and the infrastructure which is available in our parish. The access is not a problem, as the access is through Lacour Clos, and obviously this would be an extension to Lacour Clos, so we don't have any problems there. And we have money in the Housing Trust to be able to purchase this field and buy the land, and also to build. And we keep talking about right-sizing and freeing up homes for the younger generation, but this will not happen if we do not have the accommodation for people to right-size to. This is a really genuine problem in our parish. And I also have parishioners or members of the public who grew up in St Martin, have moved somewhere else. For example, I was talking to somebody at Don Farm, and they desperately would like to retire to the parish. So we have quite a few people like that. So we have people from other parishes who want to come back to St Martin's because, as the Deputy said, we have fantastic facilities there. We've got the village green, we've got pharmacy, we've got doctors, we've got vets, we've got all sorts of infrastructure in place to support the elderly members of our society. And I do acknowledge that this is a potato field, but as the Deputy has said, this is, I think this yields at least, less than 1% of the potatoes. I'm usually against building on green fields unless there is a real need, and I would say that we do have a desperate need in our parish for parishioners to downsize, for parishioners from other parishes to come back to the parish, and we're more than happy to help here to provide really good accommodation and support with the right sizing initiative of the government. So I would really hope people would support this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conatava. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Minister.
Thank you, sir. I think that there are 2 parts to this amendment. The second part obviously deals with this particular field in St Martin's, the aspirations of which have been explained by the Deputy and the Conatava. But also Proposition A makes a general change to the policy H6, which at the moment deals with just supported housing. The inspector obviously considered this. At the time there were several proposals. The Conatava St John had brought forward 2 proposals. At the time there were about whether there was a possibility of them being supported housing. But I think where we've in the debate, we are now with one in St Martin's. What the inspector had to say is that both of these aims are commendable. And I think we all want to have ways of helping people, not just people of advanced years, people like myself, but of, generally you need in support of housing. And we had that debate the other day, an excellent debate on Deputy Ayer's amendment. But they did consider this particular amendment on the field MN 410. And they did say that we agree with the Minister, because that was my position at the inquiry, that the evidential justification for the amendments is not convincing. And in particular, they talk about the needs of the over 55s, which is the first paragraph, A. And it says that the needs of the over 55, this is what the inspector said, are catered for other policies in the Bridging Island Plan and through the work of the Gateway. And so Policy H6 as drafted is not intended to apply generally to anyone over 55. So, for example, I think, for example, it could have the unintended effect if you went with the Deputy's Amendment A, that the proposal we approved for Deputy Ayer under Policy H6 for supported housing could go to anybody over 55, regardless of their needs. I think if this Amendment A, because that's what it says. It says, within Policy H6, supported housing, after the words proposals for the supported homes, including age-restricted homes for people over 55. So, I don't know, that's my interpretation having looked at Part A. So I think Part A is possibly more significant than what it would purport to be, because it affects all supported housing proposals, I think. So I put that there. I haven't got an answer to that, because that seems clear to me. If members would like to look up Policy H6, it's a very short policy in the draft plan. While I'm looking at my notes on the field, I'll try and find it. Probably 194 or something. Here we are, no, 194, 195. The policy is on 195. It's quite a short proposal. So adding in just age-related into that, I think, could be problematic. So it's page 195 for members who want to check that out. Page 195 has got the blue policy, Policy H6. I suppose one of the possibilities of, look, one of the aims, I think probably with the loss of the very significant reduction in the number of homes that members have approved for zoning, I think the aspirations we had for right-sized homes are going to be affected. I think they are, adversely. The aspiration was that we could have found within the 600 homes in the zone sites a proportion from right-sized homes to allow people within the parish communities to be able to downsize into right-sized units. And those people were very different circumstances, because they've generally got their own homes. The right-sizing policy that we all had in mind, and I know the Housing Minister brought into this strongly, was that those could only be allocated in the Gateway if the person who was downsized released a family home to the market. Released the family home that they're currently under-occupied. That was the intention in the right-sizing aim. I think there is now, I'm hoping we can still do some. It won't be for me. I think the policies still allow a right-sizing component, but it's inevitable, I think, that will be affected because of the decisions made by the Assembly not to zone the recommended sites. That's a shame, because every parish that I had spoke to, the Conitable, that's a very significant need within their parishes. I think there's also, so if we go with paragraph A, unless it's linked, unless A is any, I suppose it really applies to paragraph B, really, probably as well, is that, as worded, allocating sites to over unconditionally, as it were, for over 55 homes, it's open to, that's open to the possibility that they would be allocated without releasing any family home under occupied in a downsizing situation. So at its extreme, I'm not saying this could happen, but you might get people buying, in effect, these homes under this paragraph B. You might get them buying them as second homes. Well, I can see shaking. Well, I'm pleased that is the case. I would trust the constable with that. But I'm saying there is some real potential gaps in this proposition. So I'm going to listen to what the deputy says about how he sees those gaps being filled. And he might have a think about whether he really wants to, whether he's prepared to vote on parts A and B separately. Because what we're doing here, we're doing a zoning. We're doing a zoning. We're doing a zoning of what is agricultural lands. And we're developing it for homes. But we're saying it's for the over 55s. I think the one thing that I am quite attracted to, and I'm not sure, I might have to ask the Attorney General, it says for rent. And I'd like to know whether that's legally binding. Whether or not, because my understanding was the planning law can't specify tenure, can't limit tenure. So I don't know, sir, if the Attorney General's listening, or perhaps I could give notice, and hopefully other people will speak until the Deputy of St Martin is able to come back. So I think there are a lot of snags about this. I personally am very much keen on doing things for over 55s. As I said, the vehicle that I wanted to go with, my favourite vehicle, was to do this within the site zone for housing. And I think we could have made a major contribution. Here, zoning a site for open market homes is not something that I am prepared to recommend. And so I think it probably, unless I can hear replies that I think respond to the points I've made, I pretty certainly won't be able to support it, because I mean this site is not within the village envelope, and of course it's obviously access is poor, but they'll have to go through the adjacent Court Clough and onto a one-way system and so on, and it's quite poor. So there are negatives about this housing site as being, outside of the centre, although it does relate well to the sheltered housing development. So I think I've probably said enough. I'll wait to hear what other members have said. I don't know if the Attorney General is able to answer now. Is he, sir?
Well, let's find out. Mr. Attorney, are you available to respond to a question from the Minister?
Yes, sir, I am.
Yes.
So I don't consider that there is a difficulty with the part of the proposition which specifies that the homes are to rent. Looking at Article 4, subparagraph 4 of the 2002 law, specifically contemplates accommodation for renting. So I don't see a difficulty with that part of the proposition.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney. Yes, Conatable of St One.
Thank you, sir. And I'm pleased to follow the Attorney General's response. I just want to clarify something further for the Minister, because I'm pretty much aware that St Martin's follows the same pattern as St One's does, in that it's the rules of our housing, our association, that makes them rental properties. And certainly as a parish, St One's would never contemplate building units for purchase, because that rather defeats the object of the exercise. Not least because you have serious issues when the unfortunate tenant or owner dies, and making sure that those properties continue to remain in over 55s accommodation. Whereas if it's rental, the parish simply refurbishes it and then contacts the next person on the list and allocates them according to need. I shall be supporting this, sir, because I think, as I'm sure most members know, there is a grave shortage of over 55 accommodation. In St Wands, we have at least 168 people on our list looking for over 55 accommodation, and we have people joining that list all the time, even though we do clear it down from time to time by filling up existing empty units. And they don't come empty that often. We have tenants who've been in our units for 20 years now, who moved in their late 60s and are now in their late 80s, and long may they be with us. But it is a sad fact of life that sometimes they do pass away and the accommodation becomes free. But there's not a big turnover, is the point I'm trying to make. So I think, notwithstanding the fact that the land's agricultural land, in my mind there's a huge demand for this type of accommodation. And indeed, I have a proposition later on which will provide a small but necessarily a vital addition to that number of units. So I shall be supporting this proposition and supporting St Martin's in this matter. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conor Tarb of Trinity.
Thank you, sir. I too would like to support the parish of St Martin's in their endeavours here. Like them, the parish of Trinity have a waiting list of over 55 names of parishioners and people from across the island who would like to rent one of our retirement homes. It was unfortunate that the site that we put forward in the call for sites failed because the drainage infrastructure is at capacity in this particular area. But there is a desperate need for this type of accommodation, and I will be happy to support this proposition, this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conor Tarb. Conor Tarb of St Peter.
Thank you, sir, and I'd like to echo the thoughts of the other constables. I will be supporting this amendment. Unlike other parishes, we don't in St Peter's keep a specific list of people for the affordable accommodation, and a new list is for the for the right sizing or accommodation. We don't keep a list because we produce a new list and advertisement on each occasion. But we have, each time we have advertised, we have a large number of applicants. On one of the more recent ones, we had 21 applicants for the single unit that became available. And it is sad that those units only become available normally when somebody passes away. And there's an urgent need for this accommodation. I'm sure if we had a list, it would be a lot larger than the 21. With that, I'll just say I hope other members, despite this being a greenfield, I hope other members can give their support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Conor Tarb. Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. Just a minor point for me, sir. The Minister did, if I understood correctly, suggest that by adopting the first part of this proposition, it might somehow militate against the present policy H6, but the wording of the amendment is to include this category of people and doesn't exclude the others, so I do not think it does in any way harm the existing policy H6. And on a general matter, say yes, I can well understand the various constables approving developments of this kind if it does free up bigger properties in the parish for younger members of society. I have to say, on a personal note, over 55 seems rather young to me, but that is a personal note. But subject to that, so I would approve it.
Thank you, Deputy. Conor Tarb of St Saviour.
Yes, sir, thank you very much. We're lucky in St Saviour. We have Maison Conor Tarb homes. They are very successful. We have wet rooms in all the bungalows. They have a little garden they can be in, and they have been very, very successful. We have such a waiting list for this type of home, and to be perfectly honest with you, we have more people who pass away on the list waiting to occupy one of our buildings, one of our bungalows, than we do have in the bungalows. They seem to have a new lease of life, and they're well catered for. So I will be supporting my fellow Conor Tarb, I think, and the Deputy of St Martin, because I think these homes are needed, and it's fabulous. They're all the same ages. They all get on. They know things, and it's very, very good. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Itab. Does any member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Ward.
So I just wanted to thank Deputy Johnson for raising the point that 55 is rather young. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to make a similar speech? I think you've spoken already.
No, point of order, sir.
Point of order.
Just to remind the Deputy that that's just a matter of opinion from his point of view.
I call upon the Deputy St Martin to reply.
Thank you, sir. Can I start by thanking the Deputy of St Mary? I concur with him entirely, and I think the reading of policy H6, just adding those words there doesn't change anything, and he's quite right. Constables generally, thank you for your support. So it clearly shows that there is a need across the whole island for this type of accommodation. As my constable said quite rightly, she gets people in tears phoning up looking for homes, and I can't thank the constables enough for their support. It leaves me, sir, to just talk about the Minister's comments and address those. And I think we mustn't forget that over 55s, what's being proposed here is all about right sizing, and as I said at the start of this debate, it frees up homes. So I want to be clear, this site would be purchased by the parish, by the H Trust as it's known, which is a parish trust, and it would continue to work exactly the same as the way as it does at the moment. It would not be for homes for sale, it would be homes for rent, for an affordable rent at that, because not the open market rents. The tenure is important, but we have a system here that works, and what we want to do is to continue with it. The Minister mentioned access onto the Green Lane and the one-way system, but sir, the access to this site would be through the existing site. It would be as is. It's a system that works, and it's a system that would continue to work. I just want to get back to the Minister about housing, right sizing, but I just want to remind people yet again that every home that is freed up by people moving into these type of retirement homes frees up other homes. And I hear what the Minister's saying, but is he seriously suggesting that the procurers and the constable of St Martin's or any parish would allow someone to use one of these rented properties as a second home? I can assure him, sir, that that absolutely would not happen in St Martin's. I'm a little bit disappointed, if I might say so, that the Minister hasn't found more words to be supportive here. The Minister just seemed to me to be looking for problems in a way that don't exist, and I don't like putting people down, but we have a system here that works, and what we want to do is, what I wanted to say to the Minister is, don't try to fix something that isn't broken here. Members are right to be concerned about detail, but I thought back actually while the Minister was speaking to one of the first propositions I made in this Assembly 10 years ago now, when I bought a housing site to be rezoned, which turned into be Clos La Troque, which was opened some 18 months ago now. And at the time I remember members being worried that we might rezone a site and it might go into private hands. It might end up something that wasn't construed in the first place. But I can assure members that this is an absolute, nothing else will happen on the site other than it will be an extension of our very successful and very much in demand and much needed over 55 houses. I'll just remind members the parish gave up aspirations on Field 410 for retirement homes to concentrate on this site. And I'll just finish by concurring with those members about over 55s. It was a time that I thought over 55 was very old, but we all get there, and I'm well past it now. And I'd just like to say to members, there are lots and lots of people at my age who are looking to downsize, right size, move into these retirement homes, and I urge members to support the proposition and call for the appel. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. The appel has been called.
Clarification, sir?
point of clarification. Will you accept a point of clarification from somebody?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, please, sir.
Deputy Pershard, is it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Deputy Pershard, yes, please.
The deputy stated then that the amendment would result in an extension of the current provision. Could you just clarify whether that means that there need to be any removal of the reduction in the current provision of Laporte Clos in order to create the access required for that extension? Would any of the houses need to be taken away to create that access?
So I've been on site a number of times, as the deputy might appreciate, and I think it can be done without removing any houses from the site. And even if we did need to remove one, which I'm sure we don't, but if we did need to move one, I can assure you that the person in that site and in that home would be well catered for while we were doing that. But it's my understanding, I'm not an engineer, but there is plenty of space to put a road through between the units.
Thank you, Deputy. The appellant has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. Those joining the meeting via the Teams link may cast their votes in the chat channel. I'll ask the greffier to open the voting for members in the chamber. Four members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that the 17th Amendment has been adopted. 33 votes pour, 9 votes contre, and 1 abstention.
Could we have the abstention and the vote against, please, sir?
Yes, there were 9 votes against and 1 abstention. Yes, we can.
Deputy Young abstained, and Senator Mezek, Deputies Morel, Guida, and Hegeran voted contre in the chamber. And in the chat, Deputy Labby, the Constable of St Helier, Deputy Tadier, Deputy Pershard, Deputy Alves voted contre.
Now move to the 92nd Amendment, lodged by the Minister for the Environment, and I ask the greffier to read that amendment.
After the words "the Draft Island Plan 2022 to 25, insert the words "except that." A. In Policy H8, Housing outside the built-up area, Section 2, together with subsections A and B, should be substituted with the following. 2. In the case of an extension or where it involves the subdivision of part of an existing dwelling that would lead to the creation of separate households, A. The accommodation is required to provide independent accommodation for someone who requires a high degree of care and or support for their personal well-being and health, or B. The accommodation is capable of allowing the creation of additional households where they meet minimum internal and external space standards and specifications for homes within the existing or extended dwelling, and C. It does not facilitate a significant increase in potential occupancy, and D. Where the accommodation is capable of reintegration into the main dwelling. B. After Policy H8, there should be inserted a new proposal as follows. proposal, housing outside the built-up area. The Minister for the Environment will develop supplementary planning guidance to assist with the interpretation and application of Policy H8, housing outside the built-up area.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Obviously here now, Senator, we are, after this amendment, we are likely to go on and discuss Senator Moore's amendment number 26. And this really talks about, I think, subdivision of buildings. And of course, those buildings can be anywhere. And basically the intention in that amendment 26 is that that will be enabled in a very, very broad way. And what the amendment that I'm bringing here today, which is one of the, what I would call the sort of consolidating amendments, I tried to bring forward those elements in the proposition of, if you like, on the principle of Senator Moore, of how we can have subdivision, but do it in a very much what I would call controlled manner, or in a way that I think can ensure that where it's possible, under the rest of the conditions of the island plan, we can allow subdivision. And I'm very aware that when I spent time in our sister islands, they have a policy called a dower policy, which means that similar intentions, that where you have properties that can enable the creation of a second household, providing certain conditions are met, that can be done. And again, it's part of this issue about finding the planning balance. So obviously what we've got is that we want to make best use of the land and buildings that we've already got, but also at the same time we do need to protect the character of the coast and countryside. So trying to make sure that where we get what I would call intensification of development and use, because that will be the case if one enables a blanket subdivision, that we can make sure that it takes place in the most sustainable positions with access to services and facilities. And so the draft plan already seeks out and allows for residential development in the countryside. So, for example, a number of examples to quote. Historic buildings. I think we all know all around the island there's all sorts of farm complexes, traditional farm buildings, where this is routinely done, where we have policies which facilitate the conversion of those traditional buildings that are no longer required or valued to agriculture to go into separate occupations, and in case many residential units are achieved. Also in listed buildings, obviously where one does that, so when you can accommodate that within a listed building, that can help give the building a new sustainable use. And so again, that's in policy HE1. The policy I mentioned about agricultural buildings was ERE3. And also there is a policy particular for subdivision for the creation of separate households for our dependents who require a high degree of care or support. This is generally where a member of the extended family requires help in maintaining life, and obviously that subdivision is permitted under policy H8. So there are already a number of policies in the plan which I think help achieve this, and that's about the planning balance. And of course, Senator Moore, I've certainly thought about how we could have more flexibility into the plan, because I think that was really prompted by Senator Moore's amendment. And I think in particular what I've addressed is where this takes place outside of the built area. So, so where I think we've included in my points in the proposition. I've got point A to D in my amendment. And it's supposed, therefore, a kind of series of tests to secure these homes. The accommodation, and the tests are that the accommodation is capable of allowing the creation of additional households, providing they meet minimum internal and external space standards. And where the accommodation, but I think where it is capable of reintegration into the main building, and this is quite important, certainly very important in the case of historic buildings, that where that modification is capable of reintegration as a single dwelling. And that might apply where the buildings are at large. And so I think what I would want to do in this amendment is to make sure that we allow that subdivision to have the potential to offer multi-generational living, but doesn't create undue strain upon the services and facilities in the countryside. And of course, the Senator Moore's amendment pushes the boundaries a bit further, if you like. Not just the creation of new households, but of course the intensification of subdivision. It is open, and so I really have the very targeted proposition here. And of course, the planning inspectors looked at this and they said a more flexible approach to the use of existing buildings within the countryside is sought by Senator Moore. We agree with the Minister that the suggested amendments are not acceptable, given the strong emphasis on countryside protection in the Bridging Island Plan and the strategy of focusing development in sustainable locations. We agree with the Minister to extend the flexibility to all buildings, as that's Amendment 26, which is Senator Moore's amendment, would do the suggested change would undermine the sustainability credentials of the Bridging Island Plan. Now, this is not an easy subject, sir. As long as I can remember, this has been very controversial. I think what the amendment I'm proposing here actually does open up, increases where we can allow that subdivision. So those categories A to D, I think, provides those tests. And also, those tests, they'll need a lot more clarification on how they're going to work. And that, how they're going to work, may change in time. And so we have the means of supplementary planning guidance, and that's covered in paragraph B of the proposition, to be able to help the interpretation and application of how this policy would work. And I think, really, we should try it. We should see how it goes. We should see how it goes. For example, what are the sort of factors? For example, we want to make sure we allow subdivision that the drainage systems work. We've got a lot of properties in fact, not a lot, there's a very large number of properties in the islands which are served with private drainage systems because we haven't invested in our sewer network. That's something which I hope in the future will be dealt with. But in the meantime, a lot of these systems are failing. They're failing, and we're getting constant reports through the water pollution side of failing drainage systems that are causing pollution, and because not only, of course, do they pollute, but they pollute boreholes, because generally these properties are served by boreholes, and they create problems there. Also, we've got the issue of parking and access and roads. Getting onto sites, a lot of countryside properties that are in very inaccessible locations, and this could have, a very, very, going for a very open-ended situation where any property could subdivide. Yes, it would make a difference, but I think it could create a lot of potential problems, traffic, implications for neighbours of intensification, and I think, we should be more cautious and try my amendment to see whether or not that allows a relaxation, but in a way that can not where we can mitigate any broader effects. So I know, obviously, it's not presented as an amendment to Senator Moore. It's presented as a standalone proposition where we amend Policy H8. Policy H8 deals with housing outside the area, outside the built area. And of course, there's already, if you look at Policy H8 on page 200, you'll find there's a long list. It starts off by saying new residential development will not be supported. Then it's got 1 to 6. It's got a whole long list, nearly a whole page of exceptions. And so, section 2, this deals with the second point on that policy. It says that it is an absolute bar. It says in the case of an extension to the subdivision, that would lead to a creation of a separate household. And that is where I've widened that out, because I think we can widen out policy point 2 under policy H. And so I recommend, whether or not you make a separate decision on Senator Moore's amendment, which will follow, I strongly recommend members adopt this proposition, because it does increase or does make a more relaxed position, but in a mitigated way, to that policy on page 200, item 2 to item 2 on that long list, sir. Thank you, sir. I make the proposition.
Thank you, Minister. Is amendment seconded? Thank you. Deputy Hegarah.
Thank you, sir. Both the Minister's amendment and the amendment of Senator Moore talk about properties that are outside of the built-up area. As a part owner of a property that fits this criteria, sir, and it could potentially benefit me, I will not participate or vote in either amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does anyone wish to speak? Senator Moore.
So I would also like to state that I have a very small loft area that is possible for conversion, and I think it's important to state that at the outset of this debate. If anybody else has any such property, they perhaps might want to mention it now, but otherwise I'll speak.
Yes. Do you want to speak now? Or any other declarations of potential interest? I'm not sure that these declarations will necessarily prevent members from participating. Yes.
So I was just hearing Senator Moore there, and just made me think, many people who own a property will have a loft area that could be converted.
Well, that's what I was saying. I don't think these declarations will necessarily mean that members are disentitled from speaking or voting in this debate. They seem rather common.
So I have actually subdivided a property under the existing provisions for a family member. I'm not sure that that is a reason.
I don't think it is.
Have an
It won't-
interest,
it won't
but I
be
thought I
affected
should
by these
declare it.
changes. It won't be affected by these changes. No need to declare that. Yes.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful to the Minister for approaching my initial considerations in the Bridging Island Plan, and I do and will maintain Amendment 26, although I have obviously considered whether the Minister has gone far enough to meet my concerns. One can always, of course, look at the inspector's advice in a number of different ways. And I would be with the inspectors when they state that actually what the Minister proposes here can, although it is in the main sensible, and I will be supporting it, it also is open to interpretation and can, as they quote, has the possibility of confusion, particularly with the use of the phrase significant increase in potential occupancy. And I would hope that the Minister or his successor will provide sufficient guidance on that point. I think in the main here, though, the issue is whether or not we as an Assembly and politically are in agreement with the Minister who wishes to restrict in all possible ways the number of people who can reside in our beautiful countryside. These amendments allow for what I would consider to be very minimal developments, because they're of course restricted by the existence of existing buildings, and those are becoming fewer and fewer, it can be said. But we do see many large residences converting them for a multiplicity of uses. We see pool houses, gyms are very popular, and party rooms at the moment are extremely popular. But we do have a housing crisis, and despite Deputy Ash's earlier speech, we have a housing crisis, and also a duty upon the residents of the island to offer them a variety of lifestyles for them to access if they so wish. And as I've stated in the report to my amendment, the Opinion and Lifestyle Survey shows a massive disparity between those people living in town and in St Helier and their contentedness with their quality of life versus those who live in the country parishes. And so, sir, my proposition will be that we should be allowing more people to enjoy and to make habitats, additional units of accommodation in existing buildings where it is possible. So the Minister suggests that, well, we'll go into Amendment 26, of course, later on, sorry. The Minister suggests that this is potentially leading to intensification in the countryside, and I would urge members to consider that with a pinch of salt, perhaps, because as I've stated, there is already only a limited number of buildings that would fall into the realms of this amendment, but equally, and that therefore disregards the potential for intensification in the countryside. That being so, a small number of journeys, there's plenty of room on our roads already for a small number of journeys that this would allow. So I'm grateful to the Minister, but I do hope that members will also support Amendment 26, which will go a little bit further and offer members of the public greater enjoyment of the countryside. And so, given the time, so I'll propose the adjournment.
Thank you, Senator. The adjournment's proposed. Is it seconded? Yes, sir. Any members to speak on the adjournment? No. The date stand adjourned until 2:15.